Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Street Fighter, the reboot, Spiritual Street Fighter 2.0. We're back. It's been definitely over a year. I don't want to think about how long since I last put up a podcast, but I had the idea that I wanted to interview some people, bring some more perspectives in to talk about mentality and the growth that we undergo when we compete in fighting games, and the challenges too, because it's like there's a lot of highs and lows. There's triumph, there's pain, salt, and I've had so many amazing conversations with friends over the years about this stuff, and I thought that some people might enjoy it and we could all talk about it together and grow. So with that, my very first long-awaited guest is a very special man named Billy Kane, hailing from Paris, France. We've been talking about doing this podcast for a year, and I won't go into all the details. My apartment flooded, blah, blah, blah. But the first time I actually interacted with Billy Kane was that I heard him on another podcast, and I just loved what he had to say. And I thought he sounded really cool. I thought he sounded like a kind person and someone with a lot of great perspective. And I just dug his vibe, you know? And I DM'd him asking if he would come onto my podcast. Since then, we went to Japan and we've become friends and all that stuff. And now we're finally actually doing the podcast. And there's no one I would rather start this Spiritual Street Fighter 2.0 conversation journey with than you, Billy. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Poe. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So I would love to hear about how you started playing fighting games, but with a focus on like what drew you to fighting games? What drew you? And I can't remember if Third Strike was the first game that you played, but I think one of the most interesting questions we can ask is, why do we do this? Like, why do we put so much into this? And so I'm wondering what called you on a deeper level to put so much of your life into fighting games?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I feel like it's interesting because a lot of it is going to be very normal compared to most people. But at the same time, I feel like we all have our own internal journeys. So for me, so Third Strike was the first fighting game I learned. I played a few before, but I didn't really know how to play. And I started playing because it was fun. And I think that's sort of the same for most people, I would guess. It was fun to play. And then you get into making friends, meeting new people, you discover the competitive side of things. And then, it's up to you to decide how much you want to get into that. But I think the main answer is fun. I found it fun, so I kept playing, basically.
Well, fun will
Can
be.
I
Mhm.
can I ask you the same question, Poe? I know this is supposed to be an interview about me, but I'm very curious about what your reason for playing Street Fighter is.
Sure. Yeah, and before we started, I told Billy I want the spotlight on you. And he resisted that. So it's going to be a dialogue. This is my first time doing this, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I want it to be a dialogue with a focus on Billy. But I will say that there was something about fighting games. I actually might have started playing when I was younger than you, because I started playing when I was about 7 years old in arcades. And to be honest, the first thing that drew me to a fighting game was the violence of Mortal Kombat. Um, but as I played it, there was just something about it to be able to control the character on the screen in that way. And I do think that there was something in it where I felt like it was an extension of you, in the game.
Yeah.
The character on the screen was, connected to your decisions and what you do with your hands. Like, as a kid, I just found that so exciting. And it wasn't only the violence of Mortal Kombat that I loved, because I got into Street Fighter 2 very heavily also. And yeah, I just loved the challenge of trying to put what was in my mind, onto the screen. And um, yeah, there was just the music, the sound effects. Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat had like those amazing hit sound effects. Like when you get an uppercut in Mortal Kombat, it's like there's like an explosion. And same with Street Fighter 2, the Shoryukens and stuff. There's also almost a sensory experience to it that's just very pleasing. And I didn't think too heavily about it, but I just knew that I loved it, and I just never wanted to stop. So, that brings me though to competition, which you mentioned. I think when we love these games, even nowadays people play online, but even online there's at least some sort of social component, and you get exposed to like, other people in the lobbies, and you get kind of training partners or whatever. I mean, if you really want to, you can avoid getting to know anybody, but eventually, yeah, you start to you bump into other players, and then maybe there's tournaments happening and like a competitive community. So what was it like? Was there a moment when you decided like, I want to be a serious player, or I want to be a part of the competitive scene, or anything like that?
No, there was not. And it's interesting, right? Because I've played many years. I've played almost 25 years of this game, and mainly entering tournaments. But I started by playing friends, and some of my friends wanted to go to a tournament. So I went there, and it was fun. And there was a whole bunch of other people who were all way better than me. And I think the reason I kept playing was because I was learning. I enjoy the feeling of learning new things. Self improvement, I think, is very interesting. I like studying the game. Like, I'm not even playing, but just watching people play and trying to understand what they're thinking. And that's the main reason. I never had a moment where I felt like, okay, I want to be the best. Well, maybe at some point I had a stretch of that, and we can get into that. But I feel like when I started playing, it was less about winning and more about getting better.
Mm. I think
And
no, go
yeah,
ahead.
go on. Yeah, I was gonna say I did get a bit more into it at some point after a few years. I think sometimes you sort of seek validation from other people, and that was pretty short lived for me. But I did have a few years where I felt like I was playing a bit more to like prove myself or represent other people, whatever, your friends, your group, your country. I did have that, but honestly, like for me that was not the most enjoyable part of it, due to personality probably. But you know I think there's two sides to it, to the game. One side is competition and the other side is community, and I was always a little in between and going back and forth between those two things. I enjoy them a lot. um, but it's hard to say, if you ask me why did I start playing the game, the answer is because it was fun. Why do I keep playing? I think it's because it's fun and because I get to meet new people and make new friends. But I'm not really trying to be the best. I'm not really even thinking about that. It's more of a, but not that I'm the best, but it's more of a byproduct of things that you play and you get better.
Hmm. So, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the time when you were feeling competitive, and maybe wanting to prove yourself or belong, in the cool top player kids club, or whatever that was like for you. Because I've only known you much deeper into your journey, and you seem to be like pretty chill about everything. But I want to hear, What was fiery young Billy Kane like, to the extent that there was such a guy?
um, I think there was. I think if you ask other people, they would tell you the same thing. I was always pretty chill, but I think there was a point where I wanted to sort of prove people wrong. It was a different time. It was a time before online play. It was, part of it was even before YouTube. But I do remember once I started winning, then, I would get to face stronger players, like players who came over from Japan. And of course, they were better than me, clearly. And, I would lose, of course. And people were really harsh back then. I think it was a time where it was easier to think that you were better at the game than you really were, because you wouldn't really face off against people outside of your region or even city, because it was all offline then. So a lot of people, we all had that experience. I did as well. I thought I was okay at the game, and then when I played serious players, I realized I was really bad, and that's okay. But for a lot of people, they didn't get that experience because they weren't really going out and seeking better players. So it was a very different world. I think today you just log online and play on Fightgate and you realize, okay, I still have a lot to learn. So it was very different. But back then people were really harsh online on, like YouTube comments, forums, just about everything. And it wasn't just to me, it was to a lot of players. So I think for some of us, they wanted to prove the doubters wrong, I think. I don't know if that was a good reason to play. At least it kept us playing and learning and getting better. I did learn eventually that, there's no pleasing people. The same people who leave comments you're never going to hear about anymore. And they don't care about you. They just sort of want to spew hate out and feel better about their day. It's not about yourself. It's not about anyone else, really. It's not personal. And I didn't understand that once I started winning a bit more against stronger players, because back then there would be, much fewer comments, of course. So it was a different world. But I would say at that point, for a few years, when I was going to Japan and playing in Super Battle Opera, and, it was, of course, it was serious because, it was a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of practicing to get up to the level of players who had a way better training environment. So it was really hard. But after a few years, I realized, like, why are you even doing this? What's the point? Is it for you? Is it for other people? I think, it should always be for you. The main reason should always be for you. And I think once I had that realization, I also starting playing better. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yes.
But
go ahead.
It's a journey, like you said. It's a journey. There was a time where I was a bit more competitive. I don't think I was ever like super competitive compared to some people. But it's a long journey that you go over, and it's interesting, and you find out new things about yourself and about other people as well.
Yeah, if I had a cheesy bumper sticker phrase, a good candidate for mine would be, it's a journey. Because I have found that to be true, and to apply to just about everything in life. But yeah, so it sounds like some of the more toxic, or like you said, the doubters, you're trying to prove the doubters or the haters wrong, that kind of got wrapped up in making you a little more competitive. Is that correct?
I would say that pushed me for sure. So in a way, that's a good thing. But really, it made me realize a few things. Like, made me realize that it doesn't really matter what people say about you. It doesn't even really matter what they think of you, or like how good you are, how bad you are. They are pretty much, that sounds mean, but they're pretty relevant to your own journey, and that's really important to understand. And the other thing, I think that to me that created is also some sort of dislike for like all the online negativity that goes on, and there's a lot of it. Even today, there is some of it. I think it's better than back in the day, but there's still some of it, and that's something I try my best to shy away from,
Mm-hmm.
because in my experience, that doesn't really help.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of creates an environment where it's harder to get new people in, and also I think the main focus to me should be on learning and getting better. I think
Mm-hmm.
that means more than winning, but that's a very personal take on things.
Yeah. It's interesting that some people seem to find the drama and the trash talk and these sort of edgier, or some would even say, more toxic aspects of it. They find it really fun. And you yourself even acknowledge, that it kind of kept you playing, and you can kind of even look at it as like, oh, well, maybe it helped me in the long run, even though at the end of the day, a lot of what you realized, I think, is that that's not really your vibe, to be super competitive, or, talking trash, or, wanting to kind of humiliate people through the game. Because let's
Yeah.
be honest, there's an aspect of that, of like, and that's one of the things that's scary about the game too. It's going back to what I was saying about being a kid playing Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. It's like that's you on the screen, and it feels like it's you. And when you're fighting in front of your peers, um, yeah, there is the potential, if you want to look at it this way, to like humiliate your opponent or be humiliated potentially. And of course, lots of games, aren't like that. But yeah, for some people, what I'm trying to say is this tension and this sort of ego and tension around rivalries, and like who's going to come out looking good and who's going to come out looking like a loser, is like part of the fun of it.
Yeah.
And it's strange because even though, like you, and this is part of why, I love you so much and wanted to have you on here, is that I think we both prefer being, more respectful, and like, you know, more, having it be more positive. And yet at the same time, I can't deny that I do get a charge out of these rivalries, and, some of the, it's hard to resist. You can't look away sometimes from the Discord drama, or, some of that. So it's complicated that it, I think we both agree we prefer things to be more positive, but it can also kind of fuel things a little bit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think everyone's different, and you will find that some people strive in these environments, and some people don't. And it probably comes down to a lot of things: personality, education, whatever background. I don't think it's my place to judge anyone. I do know some people really like it, and there's some people I really like who are into like the trash talk and being disrespectful and all of that. I think, yeah, I think it comes down to what people like, and if that gives them a reason to play the game, it's probably a good thing. To me, and I think that's one of the reasons that explains it is I never saw the game as like a personal thing. It to me it reminds me more of playing sports. So let's say like play tennis or football, soccer for you, or uh, in that it's not personal. And I never felt. I understand what you're saying because it's true. The games they're quite visceral and graphic, and so you could feel if you're watching, it's like someone's getting beaten up, and
Yeah, you're literally
you know
beating him up.
right? But for some reason, I never really saw the games in that way, and I don't know what it is. But I always felt like, it's like, yeah, like a sport, pretty much. And that's why I think I sort of have this try to be respectful outlook on things. But again, I'm not trying to push this onto anyone else. I understand everyone's different. And I did enjoy. I played some people who were trash talkers, and when it's done well, and when it's like, playful and fun, and when you know how the other person is going to receive it, I think it's a good thing. I don't see any problem with it. It's more like like the complete negativity of like so and so is trash and they're bad, and then what? Then what do you do with that?
In
Just
the US, it's that they're ass. That's the phrase.
that's the phrase.
Yeah.
But what? I mean, I don't want to argue against it because it sounds like arguing against, like a tradition and something that people like. I just try and think, and maybe that's because I'm a bit older, and then I have kids and all. But I just try to think of what do you do with it. Like if you tell someone they're ass, what are the outcomes? Outcome number one, they might stop playing because they're taking time from their busy daily life, maybe stressful life. They're taking time to play this game. So if you're making it negative or painful, they might go away. And I think I've seen a lot of people do that and feel a bit disappointed with the vibe because they wanted something more positive. And the other alternative is they take it to heart and work hard and get better. Yes, that also happens. But I think you could get the same effect in both outcomes while being maybe a little bit more balanced or positive. I don't know. Maybe that's naive, but the way I would sort of use like the compliment sandwich of saying like you asked, but you're doing this well.
Yeah.
Yes, you can work on this, but I also notice that you're doing something that maybe other people are not doing, or
Yeah, that was sick when you did, back in round two, you
yeah,
made sometimes like if I'm playing someone like a long set and I'm winning most of the games, sometimes I'll look for an opportunity to be like, oh, that was a really great comeback, or like that was really smart. And, sometimes that could probably be taken as annoying, like I'm trying to make them feel better or something, but it's genuine, and like we're both learning. And I think there's always things to work on for everybody, and there are also always things to celebrate and say, oh, I should do that more, or like that was a great response in that situation, I'm growing. So yeah, there's a balance there.
I agree. And also, personal growth is probably going to look different for everyone, right? Not everyone is trying to strive to the same standards.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone has the same goals. So if I play someone and I tell them they're ass, well, what does that do? I think that to me, that says more about myself than about them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's again, I understand people enjoying that sort of environment. I think I've just been around for so long that I try and think of what can I do to be welcoming to people and to try and keep them playing. That's also a thing, and that doesn't mean you have to lie. It doesn't mean you have to be dishonest, but that means having some perspective on what where people are in their journey. For instance, there are one or two people in the French community that I would talk trash to. If they started, I would for sure, because I know, I know they're some of the best. I know their mindset. I know they wouldn't mind, but I wouldn't do it to someone that I don't know well enough to know how it's going to be perceived.
Yeah, that's something we've talked about before, and I loved how you've been emphasizing that in this conversation, that people are different. And if there's, so I said my spiritual bumper sticker is it's a journey. Um, One of the biggest life lessons, like if I could summarize what it's meant for me to grow up and become a more mature person and become an adult or whatever, a lot of it comes down to both realizing and accepting that people are different. because as crazy as this sounds, that did not sink in for me when I was, a teenager. I kind of thought that there was one right way to do things, one right way to live. And if you're not living that way, like, we should all be converging on this one correct definition of how to live or how to be a person. And if you're not, I mean, they can't both be right, like
Mhm.
being being a trash talker and being respectful can't both be right. How could that
Yes.
be? Because
Well,
but yeah.
go on. They are, but go on.
Yeah, well, I've just learned over time that, like, I mean, some things are subjective. I don't think everything is subjective. I don't think everything is like equally good, but like, people have different values, people have different goals, people have different personalities, and it's one of life's greatest frustrations sometimes, because it's like, why, I don't understand this person. But
Mhm.
it's also what makes the world go round. It's what makes life beautiful. It's what, it's the spice of life, that we're all a little bit different. And hopefully we can all agree on the main values of, like, not killing each other, or, things like that. But yeah, there's a lot of room for different ways of expressing yourself, and that's okay. And I don't even have to like all of it, um but that's okay.
It is okay, and that's also how you learn, right? You learn from other people. We, like you said, we don't have all the answers. If you think you do, then you're wrong, probably. So yeah, I understand and appreciate that, everyone's different, and people like different things. I think, at the end of the day, as long as everyone feels included and safe, I think that's what really matters to me.
I love that. And to your point a minute ago about, like, how different people take it differently, that's so important. And I think there are certain trash talkers in my scene who, they do it well. And a
Yes.
lot of that is about having empathy and understanding context and, like, who you're dealing with. Um, because the scene is so diverse. Not only, I mean, it's incredibly diverse as far as, like, race and socioeconomic background and all these things. It's one of the most diverse communities I've been in, but it's also so diverse in terms of personality and the way we communicate. There's a lot of, kind of edgy, rougher guys, and then you've got all the way down to, like, people who are literally on the spectrum and, like, are so gentle and barely talk, and, like, one example of someone who I think trash talks well, in my opinion, um, is Ahmed. We've discussed this before. Like, to be honest, I knew that his um, reputation was as a trash talker and stuff, and I was a little bit nervous to, like, meet him and start to play him. And, I've never once felt, and he's told me I'm ass, or actually, I don't think he has, but he's definitely challenged me. He's definitely said, "I can't believe you lost to that guy," or, But I've never once felt real, like, hatred or animosity. Like, he says it with a twinkle in his eye.
It's fun.
There's
Yeah.
there's fun. And I don't know. Maybe I just have a soft spot for Ahmed, but, like, I feel like, I hope he doesn't listen to this. But I feel like we have an understood respect, and that changes everything. And I don't really talk trash to him, except I will taunt. He's the only person, because every time he wins around on me, he taunts. So I will actually taunt him back, because it's fun. And I would never do that to, like, hardly anybody else, because it's context, right? That's a relationship we've developed over time. And yeah, so for me, that's huge. When you have, I think this is true in, like, coaching as well. There are coaches that can be really aggressive toward the players, and it's like, if there's no love there, if there's no respect there, it's abuse. But if there's a lot of love and respect there, then, I'm not saying it's like okay to scream in someone's face all the time or whatever, but it's different. There's a different understanding of what it means to bring in a little more emotion or a little more fire.
Yeah, I agree. I also think Ahmed is really fun. And there's a way, there's trash talk and trash talk. Like you said, there's trash talk and abuse. They're not the same. I think if you talk trash to someone, but sort of they know where it's coming from, and it's, if it comes from a place of, I don't want to say love because that sounds a little sappy, but it's sort of like inclusive-ness.
Camaraderie.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like you're us, but you're one of the boys.
Yeah.
That it's fine, right? It's fun, and maybe everyone is us, and it's not just you.
Yeah.
I think yeah, it's part of the communities. We have that as well over here. It probably is the case everywhere. What you've said about the community being so diverse is exactly the same, and it's something I treasure in these communities. It always makes me sad when people stop playing or move away, even though it's it's going to happen. It's a fact of life, and it's happened many times. But I do like, to me, Third Strike is sort of like a happy place for me personally. I think it is for a lot of other people, and I try to do as much as I can to keep it that way. Like I try not to, and maybe it's too much, but I try not to belittle other people or how good they are or how bad they are. I try not to compare them too much because usually that doesn't lead to anything positive. But I understand that, what my values are, my reasons for playing, they're not the same. And they're not, it's probably biased by the fact that I also went through a patch of playing this game where, almost no one was playing the game. And Street Fighter was sort of dying at the time. So you also had to make friends to find people to play against. And when you played against someone, and if you tell them they're ass, and if they didn't want to play against you anymore, then you were stuck with training mode. So, that probably also has an impact. Before online, it was different. And also, I also do sometimes feel a bit disconnected with online. And I realize that's like generations and where, the environment that players rise from. But for me, I feel like on Fightcade, there's so much trash talking, and a lot of it is not great. I feel like in-person trash talking, that can work. Online, playing people you don't know, it's very easy to put your own emotions to other people's words, which is a little strange, right? But because they're just words typed on a keyboard, you don't really know how they mean it. Maybe some people are trying to be fun or playful, but sometimes it doesn't really come across that way. So again, I try not to engage into that too much. I just like join a game and say hi and GGs, and for the most part, that's it.
Well, and for me, one of the worst things someone can do is not say anything.
Yeah.
Especially because, I'm chatty. I'm, I like to type in general and in Fightcade.
But that's interesting. Think of the other side.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said earlier, because for some people, maybe they don't want to talk. They just want to log in and play, and maybe they're having fun, and maybe they still respect you, but they just haven't said anything in chat because maybe they don't want to engage. That's probably fine too, right?
They're wrong, Billy.
You already know.
They are wrong. They should not do that.
Because that's hard for me as well. I like to meet new people and learn about them and make friends, but I've also come to understand that a lot of people are not in this hobby to make friends, and that's also fine, right?
And to be honest, I wasn't for a long time. That became a happy accident for me. So I totally get that. And yeah, I mean, so for me, I'd like to make fun of myself as far as like, I guess I can get paranoid about, what does this other person think of me? Even if I'm winning bad, like let's say I'm winning a lot, I can imagine that they're really angry about it or something. If I'm not getting any feedback, my mind is going to map on to that void potentially something a lot more negative than what might be
It's
happening.
probably normal, right? I think
Yeah,
that's probably normal. And maybe it has to do with ourselves also, like
yeah.
we're projecting what we feel inside or what we may have felt at some point. I don't know. But I think that's probably normal. For me, what I've had, so I never really feel like the other person might be mad, but what gets me is when I'm playing a long set with someone and it may be, I don't know, I may be winning, I may be losing, maybe back and forth, I don't know, and I don't really care because I don't care that much about the actual result. I care about, am I learning anything? Am I playing the way that I want to play? To me that matters most. But what happens is, I think we're having fun. At least I'm having fun with the other person. It's like a conversation and they do this and then I adapt and then they adapt. To me that's fun. That's when I like playing Street Fighter. And then at the end they send a message like, really salty, annoyed message. And I'm like, dude, I thought we were having a good time. It breaks my heart when that happens. And again, I shouldn't be, maybe I'm projecting, maybe I'm like trying to make friends, or maybe, to the other person, this is just, it's just Tuesday. It's like just playing Street Fighter and trying to kill the other person. To me, it's something that matters. It's like we're connecting on some level. And I don't know. It's very funny. It's happened to me several times where I'm like, okay, I think we're having fun. This is cool. And I send a message, and then I get like, I get a bunch of angry messages about my character and whatever. And I'm like, dude, this is too much for me. Yeah. Okay, maybe there was some sort of misunderstanding. But again, it's probably about trying to judge situations from your own point of view, like your own standards, your own values. Not everyone is the same. And to some people, something that you may construe as innocent or even bad, to them, it may be nothing. It may be something completely different.
I love that story, man. Like you're having this like deep spiritual connection. You're like, our souls are connecting through these pixels, and the decisions we're making. And I feel that way. And sometimes it even bothers me because even if I'm playing sometimes someone I might not get along with, I can't help but feel connect. Like this will sound so fucking, poetic, like overly sappy and overly spiritual, but like I feel a tremendous connection to people when we're really playing,
Yeah.
when we're really playing hard and adapting and counter adapting. Like it does not matter what we're like outside of the game. It's like making music. It's like if you're in a jazz trio with somebody, you may or may not be friends with them after the gig or enjoy hanging out with them. But in that moment, when you're putting your minds and hearts and souls into what you're creating, you can't help but feel that connection. And that's how you feel. And then you get back, fuck Yun. All you do is fucking turn blue. And um,
Exactly. And you got lucky and whatever. Yeah,
yeah,
it's crazy, but I feel exactly the same. That connection, it's very interesting. I think you also get that when, you realize that you're giving your best and maybe the other person is also trying really hard. I think that's always a good feeling, no matter, what you think, how you feel about the other person outside of the game. It's feeling that you're forcing one another to play better, to improve, to adapt, to come up with different solutions. I find that intellectually very stimulating. And I think that's where I get, again, why do I play the game? I think that's mainly for that feeling of, okay, we're pushing back the limits. Like I'm learning new things, I'm improving. I think that feeling is sort of addictive. It's really fun.
I love fighting games, dude. I'm fired up hearing you say that. I mean, that that's it right there. I mean, that encapsulates the magic of it, especially as you know, my first enjoyment was just the sound effects and that I could get this guy on the screen to do what I wanted. and exploring those moves, and then quickly you get into these layers and that connection that comes through that. It's so powerful, and I think many of us do experience it, and it's something that probably not everyone understands about gaming or fighting games. But yeah, so a few little loose ends to tie up. I mean, yeah, just people are different. I think we agree that that's not only is it okay, it can be a really good thing. Um, but yeah, some people are a lot better than others at like understanding the context and like building the trust that you need before maybe making it a little more spicy. But and I've had so many conversations. I want to touch on Discord. I know we're both a little bit anti-Discord. Um, this is why you were my first guest. We agree on so much stuff. Um, but and also, but before that, just I've talked to so many people, and I think we probably have a slightly different perspective on it, because even though I did play in the arcades, it was when I was very young, and then the arcades died. But so a lot of my like really serious playing has been when online was a thing. And, so many of us have agreed. We've had this conversation so many times that like as soon as you come offline, like, yeah, it still can be disappointing. The salt can still be there, but like there's something that's just, it feels so much healthier when you've got people with real skin and bones next to you, and you're playing your friends, and even when you're not playing your friends are there, and there's just something a lot, ironically, sort of, that feels a lot safer in some ways offline, like a little more, it's like more comfortable in certain respects because of that human connection. Is that something you would agree to?
Yeah. For um arcades, for tournaments, is the same thing. It's completely different. It's the reason I keep going to these events, really, because I'm old now, and you know, most people are not as old as I am at these events. But I have my friends that do go, and I try and meet new people. And it's completely different speaking with someone online with just like text conversation, and offline, being able to feel their emotions. Because I think that's a lot of it, is that you pick up on what other people are feeling or thinking or behaving, and I've had a few times where I see one person's behavior online and I feel like, okay, I'm probably not going to get along with that person. And then I meet them offline and we start talking and I learn a little bit more about them and where they come from and how they think. And then they end up being a really good friend because I understand them. So I feel like it's easier to make the effort to try to understand people offline than it is online. Online, it's very easy to misunderstand things. People also sometimes have different personalities, I think, online and offline. But I feel that so much. I like my experience. I came up learning this game offline. There was no online, and I don't even know if I would still be playing the game if I started playing online. Not that it's bad. Online is really good these days, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same feeling. I don't actually enjoy it that much because of the distance, and because one thing I really like about the community is outside of the game. What I like is, when we have a session at the arcade, and then after that we go and grab a bite for dinner and discuss anything, the game, things outside of the game, anything really is what is interesting to me, because for the most part, these people are people that I would not get to know otherwise through work, through like personal ties. They come from other backgrounds. And so it's always a great experience for me to actually speak with them or interact with them inside the game, of course, that's the thing. That's the main thing. That's why we keep coming, and it's fun. We know it's fun. But outside of the game as well, like maybe I can learn things from these people. At least I hope so. You can always learn. And that in many ways, when I go to events, I get more enjoyment from speaking to people, meeting new people. It was the case for me in New York. I met quite a few, and it was great. And somehow that fulfills me just as much as playing the game, which is interesting. But again, I think it goes back to there being two sides, one side being competition, the other side being community or community building. And to me, they're equally as important.
I have also had that experience where I thought that someone online hated me, and then we met offline, and it was like, oh, this is super chill. Like, this is great. And this is backtracking slightly, but I did want to say this as part of continuing to like make fun of myself. And you already said it. A lot of that stuff is what I'm bringing to the table. You know, I'm being really competitive. So I'm assuming they're being really competitive. Or
Yes.
I'm starting to get salty, or like am at risk of becoming salty. It's the salt is just barely behind the dam. And so I assume that they're salty. And I've actually even had that a little bit offline where like people, and because I am competitive, like I always want to play well and stuff like that. And sometimes even casuals, I can take it really seriously. I can be like really locked in on casuals, and sometimes people have seen that and they feel it. They feel that I'm taking it very seriously, and they find that, either annoying or threatening or whatever. And so for them, the trash talk is more about making it a little more playful. It's like
Mm.
bringing some levity to the situation. Whereas, for me, I I don't interpret what I'm doing as being aggressive, but they might find me just being like really stoic and serious, almost like more aggressive. So we kind of have those like mixed signals there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's
It's
just,
it's
yeah, go
it's
ahead.
interesting you say that. Sorry to cut you off, but because I'm a little bit of the same when I play. I usually, if people are joking around and talking, I try to do the same because it's a cool vibe and it's fun. But I try to be maybe a little bit overly respectful compared to most people. So I actually wouldn't talk too much because I know some people don't like it. Or, I would just be playing and trying my best because, like, to me, trying my best is respecting someone. It's actually not, I'm not trying to beat them down or embarrass them. I'm just trying to show that, I deem them good enough, and I deem anyone good enough, but to try and play my best, like I take them seriously. Because to me, that's the thing where I've felt disrespected sometimes by players who would not take me seriously. But it's interesting what you say, because that could also be interpreted as being distant or, I don't know, aloof or arrogant or things
Hmm.
like that. Definitely depends on where you come from and how you analyze things and what you're comfortable with. But what may sound right to us may not sound right to everyone else. I think you're right.
And it can be a combination. Like I think when I'm taking casuals really seriously, a lot of it is because that's what's fun for me, and like I'm trying to be respectful, and then we
Yes.
hug it out afterward. But maybe 20% of it is arrogance. Maybe I do, I'm in there to kick ass and, like feel, want to run the cab for a while or whatever. So, there's so much gray area, and I think it's just so important for us to stay humble in looking at ourselves and stay open minded um, when it comes to other people who might be different from us, or who might we might get off to the wrong foot with somebody sometimes, being because we're in a competitive space. I mean, that's happened for me a few times where things started off a little bit awkward because we were in-game rivals, or whatever, and then over time if you keep an open heart, sometimes those people can become good friends. Sometimes they don't, and that's okay too.
Yeah, it's all about communication, of course, but also respect and respecting that the other person might be different, and that's okay. Like you just said, we don't all have to be the same. That would be really boring. So thank God for people being different, and sometimes that comes with some level of friction, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world.
That is, the universe that was born. It's where
Yeah.
atoms are bumping into each other and making bonds and breaking bonds. And I mean, now I'm getting super elitist and, you know, highfalutin. But yeah, where life is messy and the universe is messy, humans are messy. But yeah, there's something beautiful about it too. Um, so pivoting a little bit, well, no, actually, one more thing about trash talk, and then we'll move on from this. Um, I'm realizing now I'd love to make chapters for this YouTube video because I think, yeah, like we just talked a lot about kind of trash talk and personalities, but I want to get into some other stuff. I think the chapters would be kind of cool. But um, Discord, what do you think about Discord? Because I feel like this doesn't get discussed that much.
Hmm. I have so I wouldn't say I'm anti Discord, but I have complicated feelings about it. The reason why is I think it's a very useful tool for communities like ours, for people to get together. I think the fact that it is so many small gated communities can be a problem sometimes, because it's very easy for them for there to be groupthink, or people all following the same ideas. And for instance, trash talk, it would be very easy for anyone to set up a Discord dedicated to trash talking someone who wouldn't be there, of course. um, I don't know how I feel about that. I think it's probably not the best way to go about things. The best way to go about things would be to communicate with that person along with everyone else. So that might be a bit naive in this day and age. And we say Discord, but really WhatsApp is the same, and Messenger apps in general are all like this. I think because there tends to be a disconnect between the way people act online and the way they act offline. I think apps like Discord only amplify that disconnect. And yeah, it's sometimes it makes me feel a little sad that people may only see one side of the community, and people may only like join the Discord and see people being really aggressive or talk trash or whatever, and not understand where that comes from, because you don't get the context between people on Discord. They may know one another offline. They may have a long history, but you don't know if you're new to watching this. So I feel like it's a lot of layers that go into this. One being that you sort of have to act a little bit to get people to be comfortable. And at the same time, these environments tend to, because it's online and it's not real life, people do tend to be maybe a little bit more toxic, or maybe a little bit more transparent. I don't know which it is, but
That's the real them, dude.
yeah, it's hard, sometimes it's hard to tell, right? and I've had some people who are like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, really, where it makes no sense and they're completely different whether you interact with them online and offline. And I try not to wonder which is the real them, but it's probably both of them to me. But that does, it's like, yes, it's very useful. You get people in, it's, you can sort of matchmake and discuss things. At the same time, it's like this sort of parallel universe where things happen. And sometimes you read the conversation, it seems very toxic, very direct. And then you see these people offline and nothing happens. They talk to one another as if they hadn't said anything. That always makes me uncomfortable. It's just, again, maybe I'm too old, but it's very strange to me. And there's also one final thing about Discord. I think it's a little sad that basically all tech discussion has moved to Discords in these
Oh,
like small
it's
gated
the
communities.
worst.
It's bad, right? Because so there are a few character Discords that seem to be really good. I'm not in them, but I've heard a lot of good about them, a lot of good things. But before that, we used to use forums, which were not perfect, but it was all public. It was all really easy to go and get
And
information.
it was
Anyone could.
logged.
It was logged exactly. You could find back posts dating 5 years, 10 years, whatever. It was great, and I sort of miss that. I don't think it would work today because it's a different world. But I feel like sometimes I open a Discord and I look at a specific channel, and most of it is trash. Most of it is just people posting junk, and I don't blame them. I that's the nature of Discord. But then you have to sift through a lot of garbage to get to the actual interesting content that you're looking for, and everyone has to do that if they want to learn about these specific things. So thank God there's a lot on YouTube these days, and it's a lot better than it was back in the day. But I still feel like it's not ideal for information sharing. And also the fact that it's gated. So, a lot of people don't know about these Discords, and you need a link to join them. So I feel like we're still missing out on building bigger communities. I feel like Discord is made to help small communities strive, like a local, regional Discord. I think that works quite well. But for anything that's bigger than that, I don't really know. Anyway, that was a lot of thoughts, but what do you think about them?
No, that was great. And I mean, there was a time when I just hated Discord, even before I started seeing more of the toxic stuff. I I just resented having to get another app. And by the way, I know you're a little older than I am. I'm like an exennial, like an
Yeah.
old millennial, and I identify as strongly having some Gen X influence because I don't know, I hung out with a lot of older kids. A lot of that was through the arcade. I was listening to Nirvana and Pearl Jam and stuff. But anyway, I feel like people about our age, we are like the prime defenders of forums. Like,
Yeah.
we love forums. Like, bring back the forums. And that's like our, you know, uh, back in my day, you had to ask Sally out to the dance in person in the hallway at school, or whatever. It's like back in our day, when you made a post about tech in Third Strike, people could just search for it in the forum and it was pinned and it was, it was great. I love forums and I always loved them for all of my like obsessive interests when I was growing up. I would always find the best forum for it and then, I would eat it up. Anyways, yeah, so I
Times
just
have changed. Times have changed, and I as much as I'd like for us to get an alternative to forums, I don't think it's gonna happen. It's gonna be different.
yeah.
But yeah, there was something I really liked about them. Also, you had to commit when you posted something. It was just not like a small message among thousands and thousands of message, and
Mhm.
it was not as probably not as troll heavy. And back in my day, it's gonna sound really old, but I remember, let's say 20 years ago, going to a forum and complaining about a character that would get you labeled as a scrub, like right away
Mm.
people would tell you, you're your ass, basically. And that's gone away. I feel like that's gone. A lot of that has gone away. You know, with time, moving on. But I feel like maybe it was a little too harsh the way it was before. But there was also
Yeah.
some good because now I feel like it's a different generation, I guess. But it's fine to complain about everything and anything, and that the issue with that, and I complain sometimes as well. I'm not going to lie and say I never complain about anything, but what comes with that is it's a whole lot of negativity. If we're okay with everyone being negative, and very few people actually saying positive things about the game or the scene or the
Mm.
community. I think that's also missing. You need some sort of balance. And on Discord, what I read, and again, I'm not on all the Discords, but a lot of it is negative. And I think that's what sort of gets me. And it's the same, to be fair, it's the same on Twitter. So, X, sorry.
Yes.
And maybe that's just the way the internet is these days. I don't know. But
Well,
I do feel like having balance and seeing positivity is also important for your growth as a player.
you're so right that um, sure you can forums and they could be harsh for sure. I remember being a bit freaked out by some of the some of the fiery rhetoric, but
Yeah.
there was also something really great about it, and I think just for pure information logging reasons, for cataloging and for communicating. I mean, I can't just scroll through hundreds of you know, random comments to find, as soon as you say something, it gets buried under,
Yes.
something else. And so I just hated Discord at first because I didn't want to have another app and I saw no use for it. It's like, this is just a bunch of group chats. Like, I don't see the use for it. And I have softened a little bit in that regard. Like, the voice chats can be really cool. So I get that was a feature I didn't really use or even know people used for a while. So now I get why, that's very useful. Yeah, it can be useful for local scenes and meeting up. One Discord I'll give a shout out to, I think the Southeast Throwdown Discord is quite good. Um, you're aware of that tournament series, right?
Yeah. I know the tournament series. I don't know the Discord, obviously, because I'm not from the States.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's good to hear that some of them are doing well.
Yeah, I feel like it's just, it's mostly just the guys that participate in the tournament regularly or have at some time in the past. And I don't know, it feels more like a real group of friends, I guess, than some discords. Not that there's never drama. And another issue I have with them is they're addicting. So I try to not even go in there too much to any of them because I always want to comment on everything. And then it's just for the next hour I'm just wondering, did anyone respond to my witty joke, so, and then as soon as you open the app, I'm just getting, I might just want to go check one thing, and then I see that, like, Keychain said something about Kuroda being put in prison in the other Discord from a notification. So then I want to, gotta go read, get the tea. Um, but yeah, I just think there are good things about it. It's a well made app in a lot of ways, but yeah, you basically already said it, and I want to pivot. I'm ready to move on, but I feel like there's something about it with the segregated little communities and the group chat nature, and it's online where people feel a little more free to be negative or talk trash or whatever. It feels like it's almost tailor made for gossip. It
Yes.
feels like
Exactly.
Discord is just like a gossip machine, and there's plenty of stuff in it that's good, but I do think when people kind of like go hide in smaller groups and talk a lot of trash and stuff, I want people to be aware of it, and maybe, yeah, just have some, be conscious of the direction that Discord often goes. And the same with Fightcade. Like, I like to just talk with my friends. That's, I'm blessed that I have enough friends now that, like, I mostly use Discord for DMs. There are a couple of Discords I go into to look for games. And then same with Fightcade. A lot of it is I choose to just meet my friends on there. I'll DM, you know, whoever, I'll message Wax or, Nero or Frankie and say, hey, want to get on for some games. And, rather than, not that I never play new people, but I don't just go in and play like random people, a whole lot. And I'm blessed to be in a place where I can do that, and we have enough players where you can do that. And I think, yeah, Discord, there's some things like that that it can be good for, but I think it's a tool to be used with caution. I feel, at least for me, I'm again, we're all different. I'm sure for some people it's like they let it roll off their shoulders and it's all fun and games and stuff, but it can give me a negative even as someone who's deeply into the scene, not someone just coming into it, it can give me a very negative perception of the scene. And I loved what you said earlier about how you only get that negative feeling sometimes and from Discord, and then you go to an event like I'll say Brooklyn last third, there was so much love in that room. And it was, I think there was something in the water that weekend, but it was like everywhere. I had so many great conversations. It felt like there was just a lot of like gratitude and good sportsmanship and people coming together. And I saw lots of people having like really deep conversations about the game and life. And, it's like if I'm only online, I can feel like everything is just toxic and yapping. And then I forget, I go to an event and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there's like so many good vibes too. So yeah.
Yeah, I have exactly the same experience. It's interesting because I feel like offline it's a lot easier to get perspective on things. You actually see people how they're doing, and you realize like a lot of the toxicity is actually pointless because they're real people. But yeah, I feel the same. I really like these offline events. Sorry, and they're the reason I keep playing the game. Really.
And when you go to an offline event, even if you play a lot online, I feel like every time I go to an offline event, it makes the online better for a
Yeah.
while, because I've gotten that boost from the offline event and I've remembered the joy and camaraderie that we can have. And of course, sometimes I play online the very same people I was hanging out with in real life as well. But yeah, it's like and I always tell people, it's like, even if you just go to one event per year, like literally one event, just like go to Jazzy and you will meet all these people that you've been playing online all year. And it just makes it feel so much more alive and positive, and you can carry that through. And when you're watching tournament streams, say, oh yeah, I met that guy, or and you're on Fightcade and oh yeah, it's this is the dude I was hanging out with a couple months ago, and it just makes it feel a lot more human and positive, in my opinion.
There's a sense of belonging that you get offline that you don't get online, in my experience. You see these people, you realize, okay, well, in many ways, they're just like me. And again, not in all ways, because everyone is different, but at least you share a passion. You may share other things, and then you realize, okay, this is the reason why I'm playing this game. At least to me, it's not to go online and beat a bunch of people and get imaginary points or whatever. I don't care about that. It gets really old really really quickly. But when you go offline and you feel like, okay, I belong with these people. Other people have such passion for the game that makes it worthwhile for me to keep playing and keep investing my time and energy into this game. And it's worth it because other people feel the same. And I'm not like a lonely weirdo for caring about this game. I think that puts things into perspective, and that's why it helps so much.
You're a part of something.
Yes.
And you know we all want to be, and this is, I mean, I don't know why I keep apologizing for saying spiritual stuff, because this is spiritual Street Fighter, but I think we all have in us this maybe innate need and desire to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that's a lot of what religion can be about too. You want to be a part of a world that's bigger than you, and that includes like other members of your religion and being part of that community, but also like just being part of the universe, being part of, some sort of cosmic destiny, right? Some sort of cosmic storyline. Even if we're just a speck of dust in it, we're a part of something big and it has meaning, and it's going somewhere. It's not just a bunch of atoms crashing together. There is some sort of purpose to all this. And,
Yes.
that's way, we could talk about that alone for 70 bajillion hours. But like, I think for me, going to these events, and it's something that can help me cope with losing too sometimes. Cause like, you know, I want to be in grand finals, and if I'm not in grand finals, I can feel a little sad, that I'm out there watching. But it's like, you know what? So's my buddy so and so. Actually at Brooklyn last third, I don't know how disappointed he was in his performance, but I was a little disappointed in mine. And Neobon didn't make top eight, and we watched top eight together, and it was so nice, to just hang out with him and be friends and talk about the games and make predictions. And it's like at the end of the day, and then when the tournament's over, even the person who won, we're all back to square one. We're all back to zero and just playing casuals again, and everybody who's in that room. And of course, like, yeah, we all respect the top players, and and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think some of these guys have given so much to the game and they're so skilled. But you don't have to be a top player to be a part of what's going on in that room. I mean, I had some amazing conversations with like more beginning players, at Brooklyn last third. And, when you bring a good vibe and you connect with people and you're trying to get better and you cheer, and, we're, like you said, just the pure connection we have over loving this thing. That we all, every person in that room is like on the same page when they're watching grand finals, and we all get it. And no matter how different we are, when you see that, they're both on Magic Pixel and the guy does a dash up Shoryu and he wins or he whiffs, whatever happens, we all get it and have that reaction. And it's just, we can all be a part of it. And I think I would encourage everyone to look at, we all have different things to offer too. Like, some people love tournament organizing, some people are top players, some people, bring humor to a scene. We all need that. We need the person that's going to make us laugh, some people bring, it's just whatever your personality, whatever your skill set is. It's not just about being the best player. There's all kinds of different ways that you can contribute and feel like you're a part of this beautiful thing.
Yeah, I agree so much. I feel like this is a tricky part to communicate to people who don't attend these events, is that from the outside, they may look like purely competition focused, and maybe to some people they are, but that's only part of it. And I think, the people you just mentioned were not top players. They're probably the most important people in the room, but they may not realize it because, we give visibility to the strongest players. And I do think, we need to keep nurturing the community and get new people in and make sure that people keep playing the game. Because at some point, we're all going to get old and we may have to stop playing at some point. But what matters is that other people keep playing and keep having that same passion that we have. So there are many ways to contribute to that, I feel. But it's a lot of it is sort of in the shadows, right? I feel like TO work, for instance, is a bit thankless and really hard and yet really important. I feel like maybe we as a community should be highlighting these people a little more. Even the people who like go in and don't even really play Third Strike that seriously, but they still go in to support the events. And maybe they don't do great from the competitive side, but at least they contributed to the event being as big as it was and as successful as it was. I have a lot of respect for these people because, it's hard to join a tournament when you know you're going to lose. But at the same time, I think most people who join tournaments already know they're not going to win.
I love that. Man, a couple things you said there. First, just what you said about the newer players being the most important in the room, or the beginning players. That's really beautiful, and it's actually something that's said in recovery, that the newcomer is the most important person in the room. And so I love, you touched on something very close to my heart, by saying that. And, just this idea that, like, it's so basic and obvious, but this idea that trying to help others, instead of focusing on your own glory, focusing on helping others to have a good time, encouraging others to continue to play. I mean, a lot of the stuff you've said tonight about trying to grow the scene and, like, make sure people feel welcome, even though there is some self-serving nature to that, because you want to have people to play. But it's really cool. And I find that because I'm very competitive and because, these are tournaments, it's like, for some reason, Third Strike tournaments has been, like, the hardest area of my life to focus on other people instead of myself. It's like, I feel like, I mean, not that I'm, like, wonderful at it. I mean, I'm a selfish, egotistical human like everybody else, but, like, I try to, but there's something about the competitive gaming scene that I think, it really activates my competitive nature, and it really activates focusing on what I'm going to do. I'm there to win. I'm there to play well. And there's just something so liberating and powerful about focusing on others. And I think a lot of people have known this their whole lives. For a lot of people, this is obvious. For a lot of people, the idea that being a good person and being kind to the people around you and welcoming the newcomer, that's more important than being the best player, that's obvious to many, many people. It hasn't always been obvious to me because, and it's intellectually obvious, but, in practice, it's like, well, when I leave this event, am I going to care more about where I placed, or, like, if I was a good person rather than an asshole? It can be hard to get those priorities straight sometimes, but
it's not just you, Poe. I don't
yeah.
think so. I think that's most people. I think I'm probably a bit of an outlier in that way. And sometimes I wonder, sometimes I go to an event, and sometimes I do well, sometimes I don't do well. But then at the end, I figured, I wonder, like, I spent a lot of time talking to people, and maybe not focusing on my own performance or my own feelings or emotions or whatever, which, if you're going to join a tournament and be serious about doing well, that's what you want to do, of course. But I found that, to me, and maybe that's because I've won several tournaments in the past already, but I found that, to me, that ended up mattering more, making me more happy in the long run than winning a tournament and moving on. I think it probably comes down to, again, where you're at in your journey. And some people are more at the beginning or in the middle of the journey. I definitely feel like I'm towards the end of my journey, as bad as that sounds.
No.
No, but for sure, I feel like, I wouldn't say I'm completely over competing and joining tournaments, but I'm happy when I win. I'll say that, but I'm not as happy as I was 15, 20 years ago. I feel like, okay, I didn't disappoint. That's more the impression that I got, rather than, okay, I impressed people, I did well, I'm happy with myself. No, it's more like I was able to play at the level where I wanted to play. that's something that can make me happy. But a lot of times I have difficulties controlling how well I play because I realize that how well other people are going to play is outside of my own control. They may have the best day of their lives and play amazing. And, no matter how I play, I may not be able to beat that. And that's okay. It's difficult to accept, but it's okay that maybe someone played better and maybe they deserve it. And maybe their journey, was made for them to play extremely well on that specific day because maybe they practiced a lot, maybe they gained a lot of experience, maybe they were feeling really good, who knows. But I feel like I feel more part of a group or community. And so I feel happy when other people do well also, rather than me wanting to like win everything as a real competitor would probably think. Like in sports, you want to win everything you join. I try my best, and if I can play well, that's good. I'm happy. But for the most part, that's it. Because I realize I can't make it about myself too much.
One other quick thing about community, and then I want to follow up on what you just said and like winning and losing. And that's kind of one of the last big topics I'd like to cover. But I just wanted to highlight once again what you said about beginning players and newer players, or even not newer players, just people who come that they know they're not going to win, and maybe they don't even take it that seriously, but they come to the tournaments, they come to the casuals, they bring their presence, and you said, you have a lot of respect for that. And I think it could be easy to be like, wait, well, why would you respect that guy, rather than the guy that grinds for hours a day and, is a wonderful player and stuff. And of course, I know you're not saying you don't respect that person too, but it's like our
No,
society.
but I do have more respect for the other person. I think you're right. And the reason why I can explain it to you
Sure.
is think about it. Someone like ourselves who puts time into the game has been playing for a long time. There's a Third Strike tournament happening in their region. They already have friends there. Of course, they're going to go for the most part, unless something happens and they cannot. But, it's easy for you to go. You have to go. This is an event that's pretty much done for you. But think about someone who, for instance, maybe like a Street Fighter 6 player or, I don't know, Vampire Savior, another game. And they know they're not great at the game because they haven't invested that much, but they decide to go. What goes into that decision? You're not going to win. You're not going to do that great. So that means you understand all of the community aspects. And, either you have passion for the game, you're curious, you want to learn more about it, or you understand that everyone matters, just as much. Top players, intermediate players, beginners, everyone is here to contribute to something. And whether they do well or not, whether they win or not, it doesn't matter in the end. What matters is everyone has a good time and, great will contribute to having a great event. And that's all that matters. And to be honest, that's the reason personally I've been going to Japan a lot over the years because, newsflash, I'm not as good as the Japanese players and I'm probably not going to be. But that's okay because I still want to go and feel the energy in the room and try and contribute to making things exciting as much as I can. And that's why for these people who are not as involved with the scene, for them to come to our events, I think means a lot and is also definitely the future. Because I've seen people come and go and, you need new people to come in. And if you don't have that, your scene is going to die. So that's the reason why. And of course, I respect top players, like everyone. But I feel like it's easier when you're established as a top player and people respect you and listen to what you say. It's a lot easier being in that role. Maybe it takes time and work, for sure. But it's easier to be in that role versus being new and not knowing people and maybe being exposed to people thinking you're bad or things like that.
Or ass.
That's exactly ass is the right word for it. I I respect the people who come out regardless because I think that means they get it.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think I would push back slightly just because I do think that being a top player and being a leader is also really hard, or it can be in its own way, just with pressure and, people wanting stuff from you and, things like that. I don't know. I don't I don't feel the need to compare necessarily, but I think there are definitely things about being newer, especially if you don't know anybody. I mean, that's, a lot of people never take that step. I mean, I've known great players on Fightcade who live really close to the arcade and they just won't come out,
Yeah, most people
Um,
don't.
although some of them, or they're good players at least, some of them have made that transition. My boy Action Bronson finally came out, and now he's come out a couple times, and it's been really special. Like, and the whole scene was kind of, because, Action Bronson is like a fixture on Fightcade and online tournaments. And, when he came out, it caused a stir. It was like, you know, whoa, Action Bronson came out, like fuck yeah, and now he's a part of it. So it can happen, and I commend people who, I mean, even Diver, it took Diver quite a while to start coming out offline, and now he's become, a beloved core member of our scene, and um, it's awesome. So it can happen, and I encourage anyone out there who's on the fence, to give it a try. I think it really helps to try to meet some people online first, to where you're meeting them, at the event. But yeah. But anyway, like, to me, there's just something so beautiful about contributing to an event like that, just to be a part of it. Like you said, you're not going to get glory. You're going because you love the game. And this is an experience I've had as a musician, because I used to, when I would be watching music, and I mean, I love attending concerts and I love listening to music, but like every now and then I would get jealous of people that I was watching perform, because I would want to be performing. But then I realized that, like, music needs listeners. Without listeners, there's no point
Yes.
of the concert. And like that day, I mean, this was many years ago when I was like really trying to make some things happen with music, and I realized it's like, hey, just enjoy being a listener right now, and this is, some nights you're on the yin side and you're performing, and some nights you're the yang side and you're listening, and we need both. And it's like, I also, in a similar way, I have so much respect and love for people that absolutely love music, but they don't play an instrument. And they don't even want to, a lot of them. They just love listening. And it's like, as a musician, those are like my favorite people. They just love what I do, and they want to listen, and they don't feel the need to go and be on stage, because we need those people. It's like, what would the point of any of this be if there was no one there? Like, if no one was watching and no one cared, like, there wouldn't be any point to it, and like, it would just end up being like three top players in a basement playing and nobody
Yes.
caring.
And I've known that, I've known that 20 years ago. That's what it was, pretty much. And that makes you realize that what matters is passion. And when you see passionate people, I mean, I always respect them. I feel like that's the most respectful, the most, worthy of respect aspect that they can have in the scene to me. And that's why, maybe my outlook is a little different than most people. But I feel like anyone who has passion, I will respect.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about winning and losing. And, circling way back, we were, if you've gotten this far, you can listen to me say for a second that Billy Kane and I had quite a journey getting the technical side of this call working. We had some spiritual challenges before we even started. So thank you for your patience being my guinea pig and first guest. Billy, you demonstrated many spiritual virtues just before we even started, like patience and, trying to help me figure it out. But my point is that my intro was a little hasty, and I don't want to dwell too much on this podcast, about people's histories with the game and like, the tournaments they've won and stuff. But I will say now, I should have said it at the beginning, that, you have had quite a career and you're very self-deprecating. And to be honest, I don't even know all the details of your career, but you have traveled the world playing Street Fighter. You've won a lot. You are, I would venture to guess, one of the most iconic European, Street Fighter players. And part of that is that you went to Super Battle Opera representing France and Europe, in the early days. And you've told me before, and you touched on it before, about how, at the beginning of the podcast, about some of the hate you got back then. But I was really moved to hear you talk to me in person about how some of that affected you. So, what was that like? You're flying to Japan. I mean, that must have been incredible. But then I know you've said that you don't feel like you were very competitive, when you got there. And then there's all this, trash talk, including from, your own countrymen. I mean, could you just go into that story a little bit for our listeners?
Yeah, it was very different. It felt like sort of like going to war, pretty much. I mean, I don't know if I like that comparison, but like going to an unknown country where you had no idea what their traditions were in regards to the game, or how good they would be. We had an idea, but at first, remember, there was no YouTube, so it was very, very early on. The thing that I remember now is almost no one having faith in us, and feeling very little support from people, even within my own country. So I don't know what it was like for US players, for instance, but for me, that was a strange thing where, the first year we went there, we were really bad. Like, we didn't know how the game worked. We had to learn a lot, but that was also really exciting. That was when I was really happy, because it's like people are opening your eyes to, oh, you can do this, you can do that. And that's how, matchups work and stuff. So it was really exciting. The years after, I think we had a decent grasp on the game. It was just lack of experience compared to the Japanese players that made it so they'd win. But I remember seeing, and this is very personal, but I remember seeing a lot of people almost feeling happy when we would lose, which was really strange to me. I never really understood it fully until at some point, I think I was having a conversation with someone and I realized that for some people, it's not exactly jealousy, but seeing other people fail can also make them feel better about themselves. Which is, it's totally not the way I see things. And I tend to be happy for someone when they manage to do what they set out to do, no matter who it is. But I think for a lot of people, it sort of makes it feel like, okay, it doesn't matter how good I am, or it doesn't matter how much work I put into the game, because no matter what I do, I'm going to lose to someone better in Japan. Which, is probably not the right way to look at things. I think the right way to look at things is they are better. We need to learn. We need to work together as a community to improve. And those were the ideas I was trying to push. But I remember even from people who were pretty decent people, pretty nice, there was that sort of I don't want to call it satisfaction, but like you know, um, and it wasn't really people wanting us to lose. It was more people happy with the status quo of things staying the same, and like Japan being the best by far and everyone else being behind. So that was a strange experience, and I did feel sometimes that felt a little bit unfair because I did win one year. I did win a game at SBO, but that was the first year, and of course it wasn't recorded. But it's not like you're bad if you lose a single game in a tournament because it was all best of one. Also, first to one, single elimination, with all the pressure on. So it was difficult, and sometimes you were able to play well, and sometimes you were not. And it was more about, and tournaments in general are a lot more about how you manage your emotions in the moment as opposed to how good you are at the game specifically. I feel that affects a lot of things. If you're able to play even 70% of what your usual playing level is, you have a pretty good chance. But if you play at 30%, you're probably not going to win. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people back then didn't really get about competition, because they hadn't competed in anything, and specifically not these games, and under pressure, high pressure environments. I feel like it's a little better these days. I don't know what's really changed, but back then, yeah, there were a lot of negative comments. It was I sort of had to like tell myself, don't read too much, because it felt like a lot of people piling on, and again having taking pleasure into saying that someone that they don't know, that they've never met, that they know almost nothing about, is ass, but that made them feel better about their day, pretty much. And I think that that's going back to what I said at the beginning, but that made me realize that it doesn't matter. Like if you're trying to change their minds, you're not gonna win, because guess what? They don't care. They just want to post their negativity online and feel better about themselves. It's like the people on Fightcade who will like rage quit, or and not say GGs, and or insult you in chat. These people don't care. There's nothing you can do to control how they feel or what they do. So you have to let go of all of these things and realize, okay, I can only focus on myself and control myself and what I want to do and how I want to do things. And at that point is when I wondered, well, what do you want to do? Are you going to win Super Battle Opera? And my answer was, well, probably not. It's going to take a lot of work to do that, and I need teammates. So what do I want to do? I want to, keep meeting new people, keep improving, be as good at the game as I can, and also try and be a good influence to people. I don't know if I've succeeded or not, but I try to foster the community. I try to keep the game alive over here, and I'm not the only person doing that. It's a team effort, of course. But that's sort of, I feel like those times have shaped the way I think about the game a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the way that you describe the vitriol, thrown toward you and your teammates, it almost sounds like, a celebrity being caught in a scandal, in the tabloids or something, or, someone, we might say they're getting canceled today or so. I mean, I know
It
it's
was
not.
really bad. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really bad, and I believe you for sure, because I mean, I'm a sensitive guy, so even one bad comment is like enough to, that could linger with me for a long
And that
time.
that was dozens, hundreds of bad comments. And
Yeah.
the thing is that it felt really unfair. I've never really talked about this, and it's personal feelings, and I got over it. But it felt really unfair because I and we, because these are team events. So it was not just me, it was also other people. And I think that's also what made it feel more unfair to me is, people being rude to teammates. But we were the underdogs, like very clearly. this was a lot of people not knowing about the scene and the differences between playing in Japan versus playing in Europe. So it felt really unfair. It's like, let's say a team from a very small country joins the World Cup, and they're probably not going to make it out of the group, right? At least not at first. It's probably going to take a few times for them playing at that level to get over that hump. That's what it felt like. But for a team like that, at least my inclination would be to support them, or try and be positive or encourage them, because what they're doing is hard. But it was the opposite that was happening. It was people trying to bury us down, pretty much, like, oh, they're bad, they're trash. It was like, and there's also I think it also goes to some part being people, mainly fans of the game, not really players, not really competitive players, but a lot of fans idolizing Japan and the Japanese players, which I get because they have so much influence and they're really great. But when you get to meet them in person and talk with them, they're just regular people. But to people online, to Third Strike fans online, they're not. They're like this, gods, pretty much, that are perfect at the game and so on. So it was a mixture of, wanting to keep the status quo as it was, with like Japan being the best, everyone else being trash, and a lot of people not having to put in effort because no matter what, it was impossible, basically. And, it was wrong. I think it was wrong. I think if you look at the past few years of global Third Strike, then international players from several regions, of course, the US, France or Europe is one, but I think there are a lot of other communities that don't get much exposure who are also really good. And these players today, they can compete with some of the best from Japan. Not everyone else. Japan is still number one, for sure. And they have the most top players. But it's not anywhere what it was 20 years ago. And what it took to get there was for people to practice, to play together, and to also believe in themselves and have the confidence that they can achieve great things. But back then, it was really hard to have confidence, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that whole psychological phenomenon is interesting, and there are probably a few things at play. Like, yeah, I hadn't thought about the worshiping the Japanese thing, but it's almost like people find a certain comfort. I mean, people like predictability
Yes.
and certainty, and it gives them a comfort. And it's sort of like, watching Michael Jordan dunk on somebody. It's like it can give them a sense that, well, even if I'm not involved in it at all, at least like somebody out there is in control,
Yeah.
like,
And I know that person is in control. So I sort of like give, control to that person. But the thing is what they don't realize is it doesn't mean that the person that was dunked on by Michael Jordan, who's like the best player of all time, it doesn't mean they're bad. They
yeah.
may be really good and they're probably way better than you are, but they don't see that.
Well, that's a whole side rant of mine that it really bothers me when people only want to give credit to, like, you know, Nika and Frankie or whatever, and like everybody else is ass,
No, it's everyone together.
Yeah, it's like there's a lot of good players, and that's, I do think that like they are, and maybe along with one or two other Americans, like a cut above, and they deserve all the credit for that. But like, yeah, that I think sometimes people can lose perspective that like even just somebody that, you know, is like does decently in the locals, or is like a B, even just like a B rank on Fightcade, like compared to the millions of people playing fighting games in the world, like, there's so many people playing Street Fighter 6 that can't get out of like silver rank or whatever, you know? And yeah, people sometimes forget that like the pool of players in these hyper competitive like international tournaments, they're already like the 1%, you know? And
Yeah.
they I wish that people would sometimes give more credit to people, cuz it's not easy to become even like a pretty good player. And if only Kuroda and KO, if they're like, and maybe Nika, you know, are like the only people that are allowed to be good, you know, like, I don't know. That's just a little bit bleak, in my opinion.
That's stupid. I'll say it.
Yeah.
It's stupid. And
I can't
also,
think that way. You know, if that works for other people to push them, then that's great. But I can't, you know, I have to be proud of what I've done, even though it's not nearly as much as the people I just mentioned, and also believe that, you know, I can continue doing more and, you know, not just feel like if I'm not literally the best of all time, you know, I'm ass. And
yeah,
there's kind of a whole spectrum of that.
it's hard though, because I feel like unless you've been competing, unless you go to these events, you probably won't realize it. Maybe a bit more now with online play and
Yeah.
Fightgate, but I think it's very easy to see someone lose and feel like, okay, I would have done better than them. I remember, in my early years, and I was still pretty new to the game, but I played Daigo, I played Hayo, I played Pino, some of those in tournament finals, and I lost, and of course they were way better than me, but I was losing. It was usually like 3-1, which I know I've told you before, but that's pretty close to how it should have gone given my level and their level at the time. So it was not like a shameful display or anything. It was
Yeah, it
just
wasn't like six perfect rounds in a
no,
row. Yeah.
no. It was not that. It was not shameful. But still, people were like, "Oh, they're trash" and whatever. So it always felt like there was something more. Um, but it's something where, I've gone on what you said about, what it means to be good. Pretty much is what you covered, or what it means to be great at the game. I've sort of gone back and forth. I think if you asked me 20 years ago, I would have been the same. I would have said like, oh, maybe there are 10 people who are great at the game, everyone else is bad. And I think that came from, maybe the way I was trying to think about things and, impose standards on myself that I was bad and I needed to improve to get to that level. And well, objectively, that's not necessarily wrong, right? It depends on where you put that cursor, where you decide, okay, above this line, good people, under everyone's ass. It's up to you to decide that.
The ass
But
line.
right, and it's pretty high in some cases. But the thing is, when you do that, you create negativity. At least in my view. So at some point, I realized you can be good and not be the best. You can be good and not be among the greatest. And you're still doing something. There's a lot of granularity to what being good at something means. And so it's very common for me to tell people like, "Oh, I played that guy. I think he's good." And if I thought he was bad, I would not have said anything. But since I thought he was good, let's try and mention it,
Mm-hmm.
because it's positivity. It's like trying to lift people up rather
Yeah.
than burying them into the ground. So, but what happens very often is people are like, I don't know, like he does this mistake and he's not good against this character. And it's like, then they're trying to argue against me that that person is not the best, which, of course I know he's not the best. I'm not trying to say he's the best. I'm just trying to be positive about something that I saw because everyone else is being negative for the most part. And maybe that's part of the competition thing,
Mm-hmm.
but it's happened a lot that, I've told people, oh, that guy, he's getting better, I think, and then right away they sort of get defensive and be like, okay, yeah, but no, he's not getting better. I'm getting better. When in fact, it's not about that specific person. And you could both be getting better.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think a lot of it is about trying to not make it about one person or yourself. It's trying to recognize that people can be good in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what you see as good, maybe other people see as bad. And that's probably okay as long as it doesn't get too negative, because that's when, people start having feelings about things. And you don't want that. You want people to keep playing. So, need to find the right balance,
It's
is what
just
I'm trying to say.
it's mysterious how people's ass line tends to be just like right below their level. You know, it's
Interesting,
like
right?
what an
It's
interesting,
It's
so that's what
rarely above.
yeah, so that's what I try to avoid, and because at the end of the day, they're just words, like, yeah, like it's very, I mean, I think statistically, like if you want to say that someone who's in the top 90, the top 10 percentile of players is bad, I feel like that's just kind of objectively wrong,
Yeah.
but it's also just, it's very, the label we put on it can be, it's almost beside the point, you know, um, because I mean, also sometimes I'll look at even top Japanese players in tournaments and be like, they're missing a lot. Like are they
They lose all the time.
are they
Yeah.
even good? Like so it's like, we're all ass, we're all good also. But I just think respect is important, and I do get why some people they feel the need to hold themselves to a really high standard, and I do that too. I mean, part of this is me talking to myself. I don't think I've been bad about like labeling everyone as ass, but like sometimes I will think that like, oh, well, I beat this guy most of the time, so like I should easily beat him in this tournament, but like it's actually closer than I think, so it's
That's a
also,
mistake. You know it. That's a mistake, Bo.
yeah, I've made that mistake a lot, and it's something that's another reason that's a little more selfish for me is like I feel like I play better when I respect my opponents. So I don't want to go into a match being like, oh, this guy isn't even close to me. He's ass, because
That's when you lose.
that's a recipe for something not so fun. And it also is a recipe for them not getting my best play, which,
Yeah.
um, as you were saying earlier, like, I don't know, I hadn't really thought about it this way before, but I want to give them my best for their sake too, because it's more fun that way. If I just start doing stupid stuff and they feel like, they beat nervous, cocky Poe, I mean, it's still great. Like, congrats, and you deserve it. But like the match is just going to be better for everybody when we're playing our
Yes.
best. And for me, deciding someone isn't good before we play is not, because to be honest, like I mean, in these tournaments, it's getting to the point where like, I mean, there's certain people, and I won't say who, but like there are a couple people in our scene and in the American scene that like I swear, like a year ago, they were very bad, and like this is, like they were ass, and this is someone with a low ass line, I'm gonna say that they were
Mm.
ass, and like they are starting to push great players now, like a year later. They are, there's one guy I can think of who was ass, and I've seen him at some of these big events, like taking some games here and there off of like really, 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 really good players, So that's another thing is people are always evolving, and if I had discouraged that guy rather than lifted him up, or if in my mind, like, when I play him, I better remember that he's gotten pretty good, like these with Fightcade and training mode and all this stuff, people can get good like that. I think not only has the gap between America and Japan really closed, but I think like the average player who's coming out to tournaments is like pretty good, and that's something to be respected.
Yeah, for sure. It's the case over here as well. Tournaments are more competitive. It's more difficult to win, and everyone is good. I feel like I don't know. For me, that sort of wondering or thinking about whether the other person is good or not. It's not really something that happens before or during play for me. Maybe after, but even then, most times I don't really think about that too much or really care. Um, I try not to compare myself to other people much, and also I get the feeling that actually assessing how good someone is really difficult
I
because
totally agree.
you don't see all the matches. You are biased towards your games against them. Maybe they don't do well against your character. Maybe they don't do well against your style. Maybe the time that you got to play them, they were rusty, whatever, had something on their minds. That's something that happens.
Yeah.
But then you watch them play like another day, and you feel like they're amazing. And the truth is, what is the truth? It's probably somewhere in between. Who knows? I don't know. I can't, I can't really assess that. I feel like it's very difficult to tell how good someone else. I feel like I can sort of tell when someone is improving. That I can usually see because that means it's someone that I've seen play several times or I've played several times, and I've noticed that they learn or they adapt better. But then saying how good they are exactly compared to other people, that sort of even gets me a little uncomfortable sometimes because I hear people discussing these things and I'm like, I don't know, and feel like sometimes it doesn't really matter. Like I just look at, are they doing well in tournaments or not? To me, that's a good sign of improvements, even though it's not completely stable and there are a lot of things you can control, but at least it's, rather objective for the most part. But yeah, it's again, I'm not saying we should be saying someone is good or someone is bad, but I always feel like, am I in the best spot to really judge that? And in a lot of cases, I think I'm not.
I totally agree. I mean, people play so differently depending on the day. And, you know, this brings up something I've talked about with Frankie a little bit is that just like we all have different values in our personalities and like in our life and communication styles and stuff, we have different values in the game. So, like some people, I mean, like an example would be Tokido, right? Was like very famous for always abusing the cheapest stuff, right? Like unblockables and things like that. And I mean, he's a very, very good player. This is not shade at Tokido, who obviously has won everything across many games and generations. But like, for some people, that's really cool. Like that's what a winner is.
It's smart.
He's finding the
Yeah.
best strategies. He's using them. And for other people, that's they don't respect that as much as like I don't know, somebody like Hayao, who I have to say at Third Strike Open this year, man, I truly was moved. I might have literally teared up a little bit watching Hayao. It, his patience and his just ability to know exactly when, to go for the gigas or whatever. And it's so funny because people who like are always going for the like grand slam home run hit, or that's sometimes a style that I haven't appreciated as much. But watching him that night, I mean, it was like magic. It was like he was tapped into, some sort of life force, some sort of psychic energy or something. I mean, it was just over and over. It was almost hard to believe what I was seeing. And he didn't win the tournament. He didn't even win the tournament. He got second. But, like to me, that's an example of something that is like really powerful. But, he doesn't play Chun. He doesn't play Yoon. He plays Hugo, and he's won a lot, but, he hasn't won as much as, some of the other really famous players. So it's like, do you value winning? Do you value, um, just abusing the best smart strategies that you can and just mercilessly? Do you enjoy creativity? Like, I know, like I'm an Umahara fan, and I've also really enjoyed watching bosses clips for similar reason, like seeing people that make the reads and play creatively. That's something that's really fun for me, and it's a very valid style, but it's not always the
Optimal.
most consistent, yeah, or optimal. So yeah, there's a lot to consider about, what makes, quote, the best or the better player.
Yeah, I agree completely. How do you rate that? And how do you compare that to other players? You can't. I don't think you can. Um, so in the end, it sort of feels like it's pointless to try and rank people in that way.
Hmm.
Um, and even I'm someone who values tournament results a lot. Uh, and again, the reason I value them is because I feel like they're probably the most objective. They're not fully objective, but they're the most objective.
Hmm.
But they don't tell the whole story in regards to like play styles and creativity and all of that. So yeah, I feel like I feel like I'd rather say someone is good if I see something good about what they do, and I think that's my way of trying to bring some positivity. If I see them making mistakes or maybe not playing up to par, I'm probably not going to say anything because that happens to everyone. And I've seen it happens to the best first strike players in the world. Like I've seen Kuroda have a bad day at the arcade. I feel like people can't really fathom that. They can't imagine that even the best players have off days, but it happens. Everyone has good and bad days, and that's fun. It's the human element. But yeah, trying to lift people up, I think, is a good. If you can, I think it's a good thing.
One of my previous episodes discussed how Kuroda got almost double perfected by KO at SBO.
Yeah.
And I like to think about that sometimes, and the awkward expression he had getting off the cab, because, it happens. And ironically, KO himself struggled to win the big one, for a
Yeah.
long time, and yet he was obviously one of the best players ever.
Everyone does. Everyone struggles. I've played Kuroda and done really, really well in Japan. And I've done well to a point where, given our respective levels, it shouldn't be that close.
Mm.
But it was because, maybe I was playing well and he wasn't. Or maybe there was another reason. Maybe he didn't like my character. Maybe, it could be a lot of things. Maybe he was sick. Maybe he was tired. These sound like excuses, but they're real. It's context. It's not excuses. It's context. And I try not to bring up the fact that I did well against so and so player, because then it sounds like I might be bragging. But that's not the point. The point is more that you can beat better players. You can also lose to quote unquote worse players.
Yeah.
And that's in tournaments, and that's even also in casuals. That can happen, because I feel like the level of play is not something that is linear, and there's not a ranking where, okay, I can't lose to people above the ass line again, and I can only lose to people above that line. That's not true. That's not how it works. There are some people who have a specific style that will give you problems, and that's good. That's what makes the game fun. But that's why I sort of try to, I know a lot of people are a bit more competitive and really care about these things and like rankings and who's better than who and who's the best. I usually try to shy away from it. I understand the appeal, but to me, it's noise. Like it doesn't help. It doesn't really help me in any way. And it's sort of the opposite, like you've said. Maybe playing someone in a tournament and feeling like, okay, this is going to be easy, and in the end, it's not. And the minute you start losing is when all that panic settles in, because you feel like, okay, I'm not going to lose to that person who I thought was bad. well, maybe they're not so bad, right?
So you had the painful, and thank you for talking about the post SBO. And I know it wasn't just SBO, but that whole saga of sort of being cut down. And yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons people do that. Sometimes they want to see the people that beat them
Yeah.
get their comeuppance in some way.
There was a lot of that. Now that you mention it, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's strange, but I just want to ask you bluntly, how did you get past that?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, I had times where I stopped playing the game. So I'm not saying I stopped because of this, but I had times where, I took breaks, like everyone does. I think it's healthy. Um, Again, I think the way I moved past it is first I realized that, no matter what I was going to do, it wouldn't change a thing. Like people who would want to be negative would be negative anyway. The second I would lose a match, they would be negative. And the second I would win one, because, after some time I did do a little better in Japan. But even when I did win in tournaments, what happened then was no one would say anything. It was not negative comments. It was just like the void, nothing. And then that's when I realized, that it was not balanced. And there was no point in sort of expecting praise or validation from people when it was just clearly not going to happen. They were not interested. It was my own journey. It was about me. And, I kept playing because focusing about myself and that feeling of learning new things and improving, that's what made me happy. You have to find what you care about. You have to find your reason for playing the game. And my reason for playing the game, maybe at first, it was to meet new people. Then, as I got into tournaments, it was to be as good as I could be. And then maybe at some point, it was like, okay, I want to prove that we can sort of stand up to Japan, even though the Japanese players were my friends. But, it was like the competition side of things. And I feel like that I didn't achieve that, and we didn't achieve that at the time, but it came later on. And that's one thing that did make me very happy. And even though, maybe it wasn't me, maybe it was other players like Yaz or Nyaban or Nicola, or, there are a lot of them who did well against the Japanese. It did make me happy to see that, people were picking up the torch and still had that passion and tried to get better. For me, it was more being in a role that's in between. Again, like community driven. And the competition side of things is because I go to these events, so I have to play. And sometimes it does feel awkward. I had many tournaments where I played and I was completely out of form and I didn't practice. And I did okay, but I didn't do great. But it was still a good experience. It's only up until maybe the past 2 years where I decided to sort of practice a little bit more again, because I felt like I could do a little better. But it's mainly about how you feel in the moment, I'd say, and goals can shift and move around. But for me, again, it's strange. I feel strange even saying it, but it's other people. I don't get that much enjoyment from winning or losing. I get enjoyment from meeting new people, learning about them, seeing their journey, seeing their growth is something that I love. And also getting that connection from within the game, playing someone and having fun in a good set. That's something I really like. And something, you can go to Japan, I don't speak Japanese, but I can play against some Japanese players and we have a good set and it's interesting and it feels like a conversation. It feels like we speak the same language, even though we don't. And at the end, we sort of like, I don't know, bump fists or something. And it seems, or they tell me in some sort of broken English that it was a good set and it was really fun. That's something that makes me happy. And it's not even the recognition, the validation, because I've stopped caring about that. But it's more the fact that, okay, we had a good time. because there's so much on earth that is negative and stressful and shitty, pretty much, that being able to maintain Third Strike as a happy place for me or for other people is something that makes me happy, gives me some purpose.
So, I mean, it's so inspiring to hear, and I really want to, I feel like I get so much of that, and like I'm kind of there, but I also still really care a lot about winning and losing, or at least I have, and it's something that I'm actively working on. So I hope.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
caring, I think caring is good.
Mm-hmm.
I think it shows, it also shows your passion
Mm-hmm.
and it shows your goals and what you want to do. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to care about it a lot. And,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes I do feel a little sad when I lose. It's mainly when I don't play up to the standard that I would like to play. It's not, that's what I mean when I say, to me, it's not so much about winning and losing. It's more about being able to play how I like to play. And I've had many sets where I lost, but I felt like I played the way I wanted to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had sets where I won and I felt like, okay, I didn't play. It's not even playing well or not playing well. It's not applying the things that I wanted to show,
Mm.
more than winning or losing. So I don't think you should think of caring about winning as something bad. I don't think so at all. I think for me, in my case, it's just um, I'm a little far removed from caring about it as much, because my experiences have been that when you win, it feels good, but it's very short lived.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you care about it, and then 5 minutes later, it's like, okay, on to the next tournament. No, I got to win again. So it's kind of even more like more pressure in some way. But anyway, sorry, I cut you off. I just wanted to say that I don't think it's a bad thing that you care so much about your results.
Well, I mean, I literally talk about this with my therapist sometimes, because yeah, I think I do care, and like I'm never. I think it's perhaps unrealistic or inhuman for me to view, like, I'm going to Frosty Faustings this weekend, and like if you asked me, would you rather go 0-2 or would you rather win the entire tournament, like
Of course.
obviously, I would like to win. And so it's like on some level I can't just not care, but I felt like, the level at which the seriousness with which I take the tournament results and the impact that it can have on my mood is not how I want to be. So, I'm trying to tone it down, in some way. And I think focusing on other people is extremely helpful. I also love everything you say about growing and focusing on improving, because I love that. Like, I love improving. And as you know, I'm a huge Alabama football fan. And arguably the greatest football coach of all time coached at Alabama from 2007 until a few years ago. And his whole philosophy was about focusing on, quote, the process, and not focusing on winning games, not focusing on the scoreboard, focusing on improvement, focusing on whatever you were doing in that moment, whether it's the next rep of squats at the gym or that particular play that you're playing in the game. And then, it's all just about trying to execute and do the best you can in each moment and improving, and sort of the values that you bring to the table. And like you said, playing the way that you set out to play, playing the way that you believe in, rather than like freaking out and abandoning your game plan in the moment. I've had some examples of that where I told myself, I'm not going to shore you against this guy. I know he wants to bait my shore you. I'm not going to do it. And then the first knockdown, I shore you. It's like that's like the worst feeling in the world.
Yes.
And I feel like my brain is broken when that happens. And then to name a positive example, though, like at Brooklyn last third, I played Big Red and I lost, but our set came down to literally the final interaction for both of us, and I really played it the way that I set out to play it. Like I played my game plan, and it was successful in general. You know, it didn't quite win me the set, but like he's an amazing player, and it, you know, was basically a coin flip at the end. So like I executed what I hoped to execute, and like, you know, played well, and the plan like pretty much worked. You know, I just didn't have quite enough, you know, and like I was okay with that. Like I was still disappointed, but it was totally different than when, you know, you just lose the plot and start doing scrubby stuff or doing the stuff that you didn't plan to do, and then you lose. You know, it's a
Yeah.
totally different experience.
And even then, so I agree completely about, I used to be, but I've changed over the years. I used to be all about the content of the games, like not even caring about winning or losing at all, but all being like situations. Like, how do you manage situations? How do you manage things in the game? That should be all that matters and all that shows improvement. If if you learn to manage things better, then that means you are improving no matter what the scoreboard says, because you can't control the other person. So, you can only focus on what you are doing in a specific moment, in a specific context. So I love what you said about that coach from the Alabama team. But even then, that loss, let's say you do have a loss and it's bad because you lose control and you start doing things that you didn't want to do, like Shoryu or whatever. It could be not that Shoryu is bad, but could be just you
Shoryu's
didn't follow.
great.
Shoryu is pretty awesome. But let's say you didn't follow your game plan,
Yeah.
pretty much. You should always go in with a plan. And if you don't follow the plan, in my experience, bad things tend to happen. Or at least it's very messy. It's like, it's hard to read, hard to understand what are the adjustments that you should do. So let's say you go in and you don't follow the plan. And I've had those even recently. The thing is, yeah, it sucks because you play bad and you look bad and you wonder, why am I doing this? What am I doing with my life? I think that's a normal thought to have. But this is, if you take a step back, this is someone else showing you, teaching you something, showing you that you're doing something wrong. How come you didn't follow the plan? Like, what did they do something to take you out of your element? Did, maybe the crowd was loud, maybe you were stressed, maybe you were tired, maybe you were hungry. There's something that happened to make it so that you didn't follow the plan. So what you want for next time is to understand why that happened and how you can improve on that. And that may be outside of the game, but it's part of competing. It's part of, and I feel like trying to reframe something that may feel negative, and it's normal that it feels negative, and by all means, like, get the emotions out, but trying to reframe that into a positive, like, what can I get from it? Because if you just feel bad about it and try to forget, I think that's a mistake. I think you should look at it clearly, maybe not right away, maybe take a few days, but look at it clearly and realize, okay, I did this, I did that. What got me to that point? Because it could happen again if you don't learn from it. You can say it's a bad day or a good day, but I think that's a little risky. I think having the humility to look at it and say, okay, what did I do wrong, is really important to your growth as a player. But it's hard to do sometimes. It's very hard to look at your losses and feel like, okay, but this is me playing bad. Yes, but it happens to all of us. How can you action it? What can you do with it is what really matters.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the idea of like, if you don't have a plan and if you don't stick to the plan, it's hard to adjust or know what to do because you just kind of did random shit,
Yes.
And likewise, if you didn't follow the plan, why didn't you follow the plan? And yeah, I think for me, it's usually outside the game. It's usually an emotional thing. It can be because I felt like, the trap we talked about earlier, like I'm quote unquote better than this person, so I can just do kind of scrubby tactics and
Mm,
win, and I'll just fall into those, and then the next thing you know, like the score's 1-1, and then you get uptight or whatever.
yeah.
Or just lack of patience. I mean, that's something I've really been working on. Like, I'm trying to just play, sometimes just win a 70-second round, you know? Like, let it, if I have a lead and they're not coming to me, just stand there, And it's hard to do, but yeah.
It's very strong.
What's that?
It's very strong because people get impatient. It's like putting the burden on your opponent
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to yourself. If you're leading and there's no reason for you to go in, then going in is probably a mistake.
Well, so you mentioned, like, you play bad, you have a bad loss, you think, what am I doing with my life? you know, how do you get through those do you ever have those thoughts now, or, you know, um, yeah, let me stop there. How do
No,
you
no,
get through that?
it's a fine question. So I'll be completely transparent. I usually do not get that much of it these days, but I did recently. And I joined, so as you know, and I should share this, I've had a bit of an issue with my hands, which is like sort of a skin disease, I guess, that makes it hard for me to play because it's painful. So that means I don't get much practice, but also even just the process of playing a game actually hurts. But I did go to a tournament recently, a few months ago, well, I felt like I had to go because it was a big event. It was a really cool one. I had promised the organizers that I would go the previous year. I told them I'm coming again because I did really well that year also. So I was on a high and feeling happy. But, I also want to contribute to the community. So it was probably the right move to go. But I felt like I didn't know if I should play or not. And I decided to play, but I didn't play that well. It was not my best performance. Not it was horrible or anything, but it was not great. And I was sort of like physically not enjoying the games when I was playing because it didn't feel great. And having that pressure on top of, knowing that you were not ready or that you didn't really feel like playing, that kind of sucked. And I had some of those thoughts that were like, why am I even going to an event like this when I know I'm not going to do well? What's the point for me? Like it just makes me look bad. That was my first thought, right? It was like, okay, but maybe some people had some expectations and I disappointed them. But then I thought about it in a different way. That was first off, why do I think people care about the way I play? They don't. For the most part, other people, they're focused on their own thing and they're not focused on you or how well you play or your performance. I'm sad to say, for the most part, people don't care. Which is, it's important to keep some perspective on that and maybe not put too much pressure on yourself. And also, what did I get out of the event? I still went and saw some friends and had fun. So it was not a complete loss. And, maybe I didn't do that well, but I saw other people do well. And other people that may not always do well. Maybe it was the first time in a while that they played well in a tournament. But that was really cool to see. Even some of the people that beat me in the tournament, I was really happy to see them do well even later on and cheer for them. So it was not a complete loss. It was more that sort of realization that, okay, this is not just about me. Even though I spent some time and energy and money to go to the event, but I still contributed to something that is greater than me. It's like we were saying earlier, maybe if I didn't go to the event and maybe if a specific player didn't beat me, then maybe they wouldn't have gone on to do the great things that they did later on. I'm not trying to take credit, but I'm just saying it's, if you're going to be a part of a community, you have to accept the good and the bad. And, you can't, you're not going to win every time. And that wouldn't be healthy And that would mean that other people are not practicing hard enough. I cannot say that. There are a lot of people in France and in Europe who are really good players, and they're definitely better players than myself. So I'm not in a position to say I should win every time or I should win against that person because they're also pretty good. Maybe some people would say they're not as good as me. Maybe I'm not even sure because how do you rank them? Uh, but I also think in my mind, I know they're pretty good. I know they can win. So, putting that perspective, I feel like, I'm saying things from my point of view that I feel like I didn't play as well as I wanted to, but trying to see it from their point of view is okay. This is the tournament where they did well. I should not take anything away from them having a great day because they've also had difficult days, and if someone's going to take away from your best performance, that sucks, right? Because the day you finally do well is the day you want people to be sort of respectful and give you some recognition, or at least not put you down. Mm-hmm. So, thinking about that, it made me realize, okay, well, maybe it stings a little, but seeing other people happy, that sort of balances it out. Trying to see things more as a group and a community rather than just myself as an individual. I think that's helped me. But it's hard to do. It's difficult to do, and it also depends on a lot of things, like the vibe of the event and how, like, your own personal thoughts at the time. What are you going through in real life? Everyone goes through difficult times, and that has an effect on things. What I realized also was when I went to that specific event, I was probably not in the best of moods. Like, I was probably not, my mindset was probably not the best because I was focused on other things, including, not feeling great physically. And it's feel like all of these things add up together. If you want to do well, you have to feel good inside. You have to be confident. You have to be in touch with who you are and who you want to be as a person. And that's usually the times where I felt that way are the times where I did the best in the game.
Man, I love that. A couple comments, I have definitely noticed, including last kind of fall and winter, I've kind of had a turning point of getting some more stability and peace in my life over the last, month or so. And I think in the few months before that, I do think there was some outside just doubts about life and myself outside the game that were, coming into the game sometimes. I definitely see a connection there between your mental state and kind of, like you said, how are you comfortable in your skin, and are you able to focus and things like that. Are you confident? As far as losing goes, a couple of things people have said to me about losing that have stuck with me. One is when I was in Japan, I was talking to somebody about losing, and Ryan Bracamonte, the Chun player, he goes, losing is good, dude. And I was like, yeah, you think so? He goes, yeah, we need to lose. He goes, if you won all the time, think about it. It'd be like purgatory. That would suck. And it's like, yeah, it's a good attitude. There's something so basic about quote unquote winning and losing, that it really is sort of like a yin yang, positive, negative, whatever. Like, there's like a duality to it that, you need. It's like if all we ever did was play perfectly and win, it would suck. Also, if we just always played badly and lost, that would also suck. So you really do need, it's sort of like, I don't know, like the rainy season and the harvest season, kind of thing. And then Smooth Cat also told me, this blew my mind, and I'm definitely not there yet, but, Smooth Cat he's a bit underground and underrated as a third strike player, but he's a very, very phenomenal CVS2 player and Street Fighter Alpha player and third strike player. Um, and he's so good that like he doesn't lose all that much. And so he told me one day he was like, "I love getting my ass kicked, dude." And I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, it gives me something to work on, And
Exactly.
I think especially in some of those other games, it's hard for him to find like a lot of competition and um, like
It's boring. It
yeah.
gets boring.
So he played Frankie online and Frankie kicked his ass and he was like, "That was great." Like I've got adaptations to make and stuff. So,
I feel the same, exact same. It's, you know, again, I look at it as someone teaching you new things. They're not they're not attacking you. They're not, telling you on a personal level that you're bad. That's not how I look at it. It's pretty much the opposite. They're taking time to play their best and show you how to improve. Like to me, that's a very kind thing. It's like they're doing you a service. I know it's hard to look at it this way sometimes because maybe you have a certain way you see yourself and you feel like, okay, well, I shouldn't be losing to this person, or maybe I shouldn't be losing by that much. That's natural as human to feel that way. But if you can take, if you can sort of silence the ego and look at look objectively at what they're telling you and what they're showing you, and you can look at the footage, and then you can go into practice mode. You can learn so much and improve so much as a player that to me it also feels like a blessing when someone comes over and kicks your ass. That's what you want as a player.
beautiful, a beautiful philosophy to aspire to.
I feel
Um,
like, yeah. And again, maybe that's why I'm not as focused on winning and losing, because winning and losing, I think they are fleeting things. Like depending on how good you get, depending on how well the other person plays, and so on, it can change. But your own progress is something that stays with you. Is something that you work on this. You're not going to forget. You're not going to get worse. When you go back to the game, it's all going to come back. So it feels like something that is worth investing into is
mm,
personal growth.
I love that, and I remember well, first of all, I feel like a theme that's coming together here is sort of seeing the bigger picture. When you talk about stepping outside of you as an individual and seeing the community, for example, like, herbal tea beat me to keep me out of top 3 the other day, but like I love herbal tea and he's been improving a lot. And like, yeah, I didn't want to lose, but stepping back from it, it's like, he's becoming a real threat and he's a great guy who's worked hard and it's cool, you step
He deserves
outside.
it.
He deserved
Yeah.
it. You step outside yourself, you see the big picture. Um, as well as stepping outside to see the big picture of like the fleeting nature of winning and losing. Like you said, on any given day, um, people play differently depending on the day and, all that stuff. And I remember one of my most special moments in my playing career. And I feel like even if one day I happen to win like a huge tournament, I still don't know how much more it would surpass the first time I won a tournament in my comeback. Um, and I beat Mutant XP in Grand Finals reset, final game, final round. And like I didn't pop off, like it just felt like I had given every single ounce of my soul to that set. Like I played my very best. I fought. It was back and forth the whole time and I just felt like, you know, Anthony had put me through absolute fire, and I had come out on the other side, just by a nose. And I was so proud. I just like looked up at the heavens and, it was like everyone applauded. It was like a beautiful moment of just feeling like all my work paid off. And it felt great. I still feel great when I think about it. But I remember, and a few people gave me hugs and stuff. And I swear, 10 minutes later, everyone treated me exactly the same, as they had beforehand.
Yeah,
Um,
because why would they treat you differently?
yeah, I mean, it was like nothing had happened,
Yeah.
and in fact, most people didn't realize I hadn't won locals already. Like they didn't even
Mm.
know.
Because again, and I think this is an interesting case of ourselves being too within our own heads.
Hmm.
Is this is something that you cared about a lot, probably, and
Right.
that's fine. That's no, but that's fine. That's normal. But maybe other people didn't care about it that much. Like it didn't occur to them that Poe had never won one of those tournaments and cared about it a lot, and that it meant so much to him, because they just go on with their lives, and to them it's not what they're focused on. To you it is, and that's the way you see your world. And I think in some ways that can help you because it can give you some strength, and it gives you the energy to apply yourself into something holy. But also sometimes it can get to be a bit too much. Like you
Hmm.
can be within your hand. Like I was at that tournament I mentioned where I felt like, okay, I want to go, but I don't really want to embarrass myself. Well, in the end, what's the result? The people didn't really care. I was the only one who really cared about it.
Yeah,
But I was in my head,
I
and
cared.
yeah,
I was
you cared a
watching
lot.
intently, but
Oh, that's very kind of you. Very nice. But it's like sometimes you do have to try and gain perspective, take a step back and look at things and realize, okay, this is not only about me, it's about everyone else who's taking part into this thing. And I
yeah,
don't, just because I think I'm good doesn't mean I deserve anything more than the others. That's the way I try to look at things.
I love that. And it's something we actually say in the recovery community as well. Like, if somebody, a lot of times people get really nervous when they're going to speak, at a meeting and tell their story. And a common way to comfort those people is to say, don't worry about it. Everybody's just thinking about themselves anyway, and they're probably not even listening that much, you know,
Yeah, and that's life,
which is
right?
only halfway true. I mean, there are people that are listening, and there are people that care about tournament results, but yeah, it's the truth is somewhere in between. But yeah, this idea that, like, you know, and it's only natural, right? It's only human, it's only human for you in your life to feel like, you're the main character of a Shakespearean play, or a Homeric epic, you're the hero, you're the villain, you're all of it, but it's just not how it is.
It's interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never had that thought. I understand. I think most people do.
Mm,
Like from my interactions with people as a whole, I feel like a lot of people, maybe even most, feel like, they're sort of like the main character in their lives, and, things revolve around them maybe a little bit more. And like you said, maybe they're the hero, maybe they're the villain, but they are at the center of things happening. I don't think for a single second in my life that I have felt that way. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's, personality. I don't know if it's education or my background. I'm sure some would say it's like a lack of confidence, maybe,
mm,
but I have never had that thought where I felt like, okay, this is about me. It was always more about, this is about us, or this is
yeah,
about a different thing. It's mainly, it's interesting the parallel that you made to religion, because I'm not a religious person, but a lot of this sounds like this is not about me. It's about things that are greater than me. which sounds like religion pretty much. But I don't exactly know where this sort of thinking comes from. But I think in some ways, sometimes maybe it makes it a little harder to do well in tournaments because my focus tends to be on other people too much, maybe. But sometimes it helps me because I don't
Well,
get too
let's
caught up
trade.
in. Yeah,
Let's
maybe.
trade. I think that
Let's
would
see.
let's try. Well, first of all, William X. Kane built different. I mean, I don't even you were, yeah, whether it's genetics or your parenting that you were raised with or what, that's remarkable that don't haven't felt that way. Um, but it does bring to mind a as far as the stepping outside of yourself and this kind of religious aspect, or quasi religious theme. Um, Something that gives me a lot of comfort is the idea that everything happens for a reason. And I'm not saying that everything does happen for a reason. And I understand why some people hate that idea because it's like, oh, yeah, I mean, kids die of cancer and the Holocaust happened, that seems like it. I'm sure there was a great reason for that, and I totally get that. But at the same time, the idea that I loved what you said about, hey, like maybe the person that beat you, like that gave them the confidence to go on and do more or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know, or maybe the fact that you lost, and it made you doubt Third Strike a little bit afterward. Maybe that happened so that you could feel extra grateful when you came to New York and you were able to play again and have fun. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I can trace some of my best tournament performances to horrible losses in the months prior. Like
yeah,
very clearly, like this is what drove me to learn new things and try and improve my mindset so that I was able to do better.
yeah. So we never know, and it also might not be about us. It might just be about that other person. Maybe
Yes.
they were having a bad day, and they needed that win that day. Or who knows? Like, and we also don't have to figure it out and know what it is. Just the idea that, hey, maybe there was a reason for some of this, and not just results, but I mean that goes for all of life. But maybe there was a reason, and so I just have another question or two left. I also we've been going on here for a minute. I'm very happy with the conversation we've had.
Me too.
I would like to ask. So I asked how you deal with losing, and we've touched on a lot of that. And I want to ask how you deal with winning. And I remember, there's sort of a contrast because one of the first tournaments of yours that I watched closely was the TSB last year, where you beat Frankie and you finished second and almost won the whole tournament. And then, of course, this year it was totally different. You had the hand injury, it was disappointing. But, like, what was it like to do so well? I mean, you really crushed it at that tournament. You beat Yaz and you just had an amazing run. Does that. I know you said you don't get too excited, but you did say that the loss stung a little bit this year. I mean, did that pump you up? And, like, how do you handle doing well? Because that can have its own, you know, how we deal with success is its own question, right?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that was probably me at my best, and then last year me at my worst. But I deal with it by trying to keep my feet on the ground. So even when people come up to me, of course, it feels nice to do well, and mostly I was happy that I was able to play in a way that I had envisioned in my mind. Like this is how I want to play, especially against Chun Li, because I did well against Chun Li in that tournament, and it's a matchup that I've struggled with sometimes in the past. So I was happy with that. I was happy with having people cheer me on and come to me and say really nice things. But in the end, you forget about these pretty quickly. And also, I didn't win the tournament, so I feel like to me that was like the perfect scenario where you get the good aspects, you get the good things, but you also don't win, so you still have some sort of hunger. Because I had lost to Niaban twice, so it was really good because it gave me confidence, but also it kept me sharp. That I had to keep practicing. I had to do even better. And a few months later, I was able to win a tournament in the finals against Niaban, who's a really good player, of course, and that was also good because it not that it felt like revenge or anything. It's completely different, but it felt like okay when I look at the games that I had against him a few months prior, and then the games I had when I won, clearly figured out some things and I played differently and I brought a new game plan. I made some adjustments and I was able to keep up. So that felt good. But what I do is I try not to let it go to my head. It's pretty easy because we have a lot of good players. But even beyond that, I know that like when doing well in a tournament or doing bad in a tournament, it doesn't really change who you are. It doesn't change how good or bad you are. It only changes maybe your mood at the moment, but you're still the same player. It's just maybe you made a few mistakes there, and maybe you didn't make those mistakes during that other tournament. So it doesn't mean that you're better than the players that you beat. It doesn't mean that you're worse than the players you lost to. At least that's how I try to view things, not as something that's linear about how good you are, right? Because you're only as good as your last performance to me. So knowing that, I try not to focus on the winning or the losing too much. I try to focus as much as I can on what can I learn from how I played and how my opponents played, and how can I keep improving, how can I get better, because even when you win you make mistakes usually. No one plays perfect, and you can still get information from the game and you can still learn, and to me that's what feels better. The winning, it feels nice, but it's very short-lived. The feeling of knowing I was able to put into action what I practiced, or all the like footage analysis that I did, and trying to come up with solutions, analyzing specific situations, all of that had some sort of impact on my game, and I was able to show that under pressure. Yes, that is a good feeling. Win or lose, it's a good feeling. It's something I like. So I try to focus on that part because that's what brings me joy. So I should focus on that part. And I should try, no matter how well I do, I should try to remember that in the end, that is what matters, because that is what contributes the most to my journey as a player. For personal growth, if I want to keep learning, that's what's important. It's not whether I won the tournament or not. Despite what your brain might tell you. Your brain might tell you, okay, if you win the tournament, if you win a few tournaments, then you're a top player, you're there, you're considered as something. That's not how I try to view things. I try to view things as, okay, I made mistakes. How can I try to not do them without being too harsh on myself, without being too perfectionist, but still, try and keep that continuous improvement. And it's a process. It's like you said before, it's a process. So I try to, again, it's a little bit of trying to look at the big picture and not just at like one single match or tournament or whatever. It's more perspective. Like I'm looking at this as a journey. Maybe I did well, maybe I didn't do well, but the how is what matters. What can I take away from it?
Yeah, like if you win a tournament that's, where you are the best player in the tournament and you play scrubby, but you clutch it out, that's completely different than, you develop an amazing game plan, you execute the game plan, and then maybe you lose to like an amazing player, but
Yes.
you played way better.
Yeah.
And Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to be careful. Like something that I'm working on is like I want to take the losses less hard, but I also know I feel philosophically like that means I also need to get a little less excited about the winning,
Yeah,
because
it goes together.
exactly. It's like if I beat somebody that's really great or I win a tournament and I feel like, I'm the fucking man now, I'm so great at this game, I've made it, or whatever. You're setting yourself up for this tremendous crash the next
Yeah.
time that you have a disappointment.
But I have a question for you,
Yeah.
because I think you're completely right. Wins and losses do go together. So you have to accept that if you don't want to take it as hard, then you sort of have to not care as much about winning. But why? And this is personal. And again, there's nothing wrong with caring about it. But why do you care so much about winning when you enter a tournament?
Mm, yeah.
Why is it uh, I get the basic urge of competition and entering something and wanting to be the best. I think that's pretty natural, but it sounds like you're putting a sort of burden on you to perform well.
hmm Well, that's a great question. And I'm the host, so I'm not going to answer it. Just kidding. Um,
Hmm.
I've always, I mean, to go way into the past. I mean, I'm an only child. Um, I was given a lot growing up, and to be totally blunt about it, like I've usually done well in the things that I put my mind to. Um, and I think that I've always felt some of it is like, and no one has ever put this pressure on me, but I do kind of feel like I owe the people around me, something great with my life. Whether it's my parents, whether it's, friends, whether it's, God or the universe. I feel like I've had a lot of advantages. So I feel like, and again, I've tended to succeed in things. So it's like I expect more of that. Um, some of it I'm sure is ego. I mean, I was bullied a little bit when I was young, and I definitely felt inferior to my friends. I mean, and this has nothing to do with fighting games. This is just in life. And I think I felt the need to to prove myself, and if I did that, then I could feel good about myself,
Hmm.
and then I would also feel safe from other people, cuz like if I'm the best, then you can't really touch me, I'm better than you. Um, so I think there was some of that. All that is stuff that I've worked really hard to unpack and unlearn, and I think I've made some progress on that. As far as Third Strike specifically, I think part of it is because I'm older, and because I took such a long break, I have felt like, well, I need to win now, because like I'm probably going to have kids at some point, and like, you know, I don't know, like I felt like when I made my comeback, I never imagined it was going to be like 5 to 10 years of playing. I don't know what, I didn't really have anything in mind necessarily, but that certainly wasn't what was coming to mind. Um, And yeah, I think because of my age, because there are other things that I want to focus on, I think I felt like, okay, I'm getting better really quickly and I'm getting pretty good. And like maybe I can really, be one of the very best. And I need to do that now because, there are other things I need to focus on. And, also, it is better to be a little bit younger, when you're playing fighting games and stuff. So I think I felt like in a rush to succeed or prove myself or whatever. But I've been thinking lately, and I know you read my tweet. Like, I want to treat this as a little bit more of a longer term journey, which I think takes a little bit of the pressure off. Because, like, back the last couple years, it was always kind of like, well, I'm going to play really hard through the jazzy season and then I'm not sure after that, you know? But what I've realized is, like, I would rather play for another several years at maybe like an 80% effort level than just go absolutely nuts. You know, because that's another reason I feel pressure to win is because, you know, I made third strike, like, and this is part of why I quit the first time I played fighting games. I can make one thing kind of like my whole identity and self-worth. Um, and I know that's bad. I mean, obviously that's stupid. But when I put my heart and soul into something so much, it's like, you know, I really want to feel like I'm getting back from it, you know, what I put into it. And I think that's somewhat reasonable, but only to a point. So, you know, I think, yeah, it was the first couple years of me playing again was like very intense and it was a lot of fun also. But I think at this point, like, I've just kind of realized that I love playing and I love my friends and I still do want to prove myself. I still want to, you know, do better and get better. But I think that, you know, on some level, I already have proven myself, like, not to be the best, but to be a strong player. And I'm really proud of that. And like you said before, though, I mean, I remember when I got back from Japan, I thought, well, I'm never going to be insecure again because I crushed it in Japan and nobody can say shit to me or whatever. And then, of course, the first time I had a bad loss, I was miserable.
Of course, because it's about you. It's not about other people. I feel like those thoughts that you have, that will to prove yourself. I don't know if that's the right word, but it's in your head.
Mm-hmm.
It's not other people putting these pressures on yourself, which I get. You know, I've felt similar before. But I was going to say, you keep saying that you want to prove yourself and you want to be a good player, you want to do well, but you've already done these things. Maybe your brain is telling you that you didn't, or maybe you want to do even better than, you know, how you played in Japan, which was amazing. But what I want to say is you're always going to feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
When you win a big event, you're just going to feel like, okay, I need to win the next one. And then the next one, and then on to bigger and bigger things. And then, you know, if you're like me, you might end up in Japan playing against them and having a realization that, well, maybe this might be a little too much for me. But I feel like you're always going to feel that way. I feel that, like, this is about yourself. And what you're saying about managing how much investment, emotional investment, as well as time you're putting into the game, I feel like that's a really great way to look at things, because you don't want to burn out, and you also don't want to put your self-worth. You say that was stupid, and everyone knows it is, but, you know, sometimes we end up feeling that way, putting your self-worth into something that you can't fully control, because you may be playing as well as even imaginably possible, but you might still lose. Let's say you're playing against, I don't know, Michael or Shiroko or Chun-Li, and you play almost a perfect game, but they also play a perfect game. Well, who's going to win? They are going to win. So you can't put, you can't put too much of your identity into that. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a realization that I had at some point. When you asked me, you know, why did I keep playing, even though I didn't feel like I wanted to be the best anymore, or didn't feel that competitive anymore. I feel like that's a realization where I felt like, okay, my own worth is not tied to how well I do in this game. Like, maybe I felt that way at some point. Maybe reading some comments made me feel like, okay, this is what matters. If I don't win this big tournament, then I'm a failure. But that's wrong. You're not just a third strike player. You are many things in life. Mm-hmm. And, you know, there's not just failure and success. There's, like, nuance to all of these things. And you have to also tell your brain that, okay, maybe that time I did well, and I need to remember that time I did well, and not just focus on the times where I didn't do well. Because if you do that, you're always going to feel miserable. And it's not, it's like your brain telling you a version of the truth that is not the truth. It's like sort of tainted and black and negative and not not reality. But if you don't have anyone out there to sort of ground you and tell you, okay, this is not the truth. The way you're looking at things is not exactly the way they are. Then it's really hard to do that by yourself.
I agree. I thank you for all of that. And yeah, I think you're right that, and this is something that, I remember dealing with in high school with like school and sports where, I would do really, really, really well with stuff, but it was still not good enough, or like, what's the next thing that I need to do? And yeah, like, I think it is within me, this feeling, and there is no result. Because again, I'm sure if I won Jazzy, I would feel just like I did after Japan and think, I'm good now. I made it, and then you lose some laggy set on Fightcade and you're annoyed again and start, questioning it. So I think, really remembering, yeah, I think staying balanced is good. I think, again, taking a more long term approach. Like, I already feel relief having decided, like, I think I'm going to play a few more years instead of just always feel like I'm on the verge of maybe retiring. It's like I'm going to play a few more years. I've got lots of tournaments. I don't need, if this one doesn't go great, it's not the end of the world. Um, and
Are you having fun?
I am having fun. And that's another thing. I don't always have fun at tournaments. I will say that, but I think I can learn to more. And, sometimes I do, but I love playing is the thing. Like, I
Yeah.
really love playing. Um, I've loved it my whole life and I want to continue. And like you, I love improving. And something that has really helped me that at times I can like get away from it, and this is why I am trying to sort of detach from tournament results a little bit. And, I know you said you value it highly, but it's like the skill that you have, and like you said, the tournament is a lot about emotion, but it's like I want to keep working on that. But I
Yeah.
also, if I just focus on being the best player that I can be, sort of like just raising my power level, like the results are going to be up and down, but they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, for sure.
Like if I
You're gonna
just,
improve.
if
Mm.
I keep improving and I'm able
Because
to get a
you
little
can control.
better.
Yeah, it's something that you can control.
Yeah.
Whereas tournament results you can't fully control.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, I cut you off.
No, no. Yeah. You, like you said, I love that I think you said this, or maybe it was someone else, but there's a different, you can influence tournament results, but you can't control them,
Yeah.
and it's like, yeah, some days, like I know that I'm going to keep getting a better tournament mentality. And if I can do that while also mostly just focusing on, becoming a better player, because really, as much like, yeah, I want to win some tournaments, but what I really want to be is a great player, which is related to winning tournaments, but it's not the same thing.
What
And
is it? A great player in your mind?
yeah, that's a good question. But I think just someone with a really high skill level in terms of like decision making, game knowledge, adaptations, execution. Um, and we could get into it, more specifically. But I mean, just sort of raw gameplay skill, you know.
And
Uh,
how far do you think you are from that, or are you already there? How do you feel?
I mean, I think I'm within. Yeah, I mean, I don't remember if I used the word great or like what I said exactly,
Great.
but I'm in a range that I am proud of, and I would like to continue going deeper. You know.
But I agree with that. But then you need to be more specific. Because if your goal is being a great player, then you need to be able to define it,
Hmm.
and not just feel like, okay, I'm proud of where I am, which is, should be proud by all means. But if you don't know how far you are from that goal, maybe you're
Hmm.
already there. Who knows? But that means in your mind, you're always chasing something you can't have.
Hmm. Well,
So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, you were gonna say something.
No, well, I think I don't know if I have the clarity of thought to fully respond and fully define like what a great player is, but yeah, I feel like phase 1 of like, and I've said this before, if I never played another game, I would feel like I pretty much did what I set out to do, and a big part of that is just, being a quote unquote great player. So
So
I'm kind of
you
already there.
you shouldn't feel any more pressure then.
Yeah.
You should be happy with yourself.
Yeah.
You should look at, no, but really, you should
Thank you.
look at what you did and feel like I already did what I set out to do. So
Yeah.
everything else is just like a bonus. It's, time to have fun, time to play without any pressure. No, but it's true,
I
right?
should feel that way, shouldn't I?
You should. We all
Yeah.
should.
Well,
but, but I think it's important because, maybe you have a general feeling in your mind that you should do better or you need to do better or you want to do better. But what does that mean exactly? Because unless you define it and say, for instance, I want top 8 at Jazzy, and you probably shouldn't do that because it's not fully under your control, but at least it's specific. If you don't have anything specific, the issue is you're always stuck feeling like you're missing something.
hmm.
There's something out there I could always be doing better. Well, yes, you could always be doing better, but is that a problem? Is that an issue? I don't think it is, unless you make it an issue.
Hmm.
And that's why, if you have goals, I think it's great to have goals, but they should be specific. They should be measurable.
Hmm.
Otherwise, it's more like a feeling. It's like wallowing in an emotion. Maybe one day you're going to do great, and then the next day you're not going to do as great, and you're always going to be feeling like, okay, this is impossible. I'm not going to attain what I want because I don't even know exactly what I want. And what you define as being a great player, maybe today you see that as maybe, let's give a random example. Maybe you see like Match, the Goki player, as a great player, and you want to be just as good. But maybe in a couple of years you don't see him as a good player anymore, a great player. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
you want to be as great as Kuroda or anyone else. This is just random names, but it's anything that is fleeting. I think I would try and again shy away from because it builds confusion in your mind that, well, you can't do it, so maybe you're not good enough.
Yeah,
In that case, no matter how good you are, you can't do it because you can't define it.
that's a very good point. Um because I also feel like chasing specific result. Oh, I wasn't near the mic. Um I
It's okay.
It's a great point because I feel like setting specific results like yeah, top 8 at Jazzy or top 3 at Jazzy or winning, you know,
It's risky.
10
Yeah.
locals this year or whatever. Yeah, it's very risky. Um but then the problem with like the goal I said to you was it is a bit ambiguous, which leads to me constantly changing the goalpost, right?
Yes.
And yeah, I think there are specific gameplay goals that I have. Like certain tactics that I've been trying to work in,
Okay.
and things like that. And that's fun. I really enjoy pursuing those. And as far as tournaments go, I would really like to just more consistently feel like I'm playing like myself in tournaments. And I know that there's always probably going to be some tournament nerves and stuff, but like you said, like sticking to the game plans more consistently, things like that. Um, and I think I've come a long way with that over the years. But yeah, I think you're right that Honestly, it's very hard for me to just give myself a pat on the back and say, you did it, dude. You came back after 10 years. You've won a bunch of tournaments. You went to Japan. Some of the best in the world love playing you and respect you. Like, you did it. Like
Yeah.
that's very hard. And I'm almost afraid to, and this goes way beyond third strike. It's like I'm afraid that if I don't have this like desperate drive to be better, or to prove myself or whatever, that I'll just like be lazy or never.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I I don't know. I would try that. I would try gratitude.
Okay.
Like being thankful for what you got to do and uh, got to play against strong players and were able to put in the work and invest the time because not everyone is able to do that,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
There are
So we're
people
lucky.
without running water in this world,
Yes. So
I
we're
mean,
lucky to be able to even talk about this game. And I feel like that's sort of, you've sort of mentioned giving back to other people or
mhm.
God or, someone else. I feel like that's also part of, a way to give back. It's not just how well I'm going to do in a tournament, because again, you can't fully control that. So try your best, improve as much as possible, but don't put too much of your self worth into that, I would say. However, you can give back by being thankful, by being positive,
Mm.
by lifting other people up in the community. I think in some way that's also maybe what I'm trying to do. Maybe I'm trying to sort of, I don't want to say atone, that sounds crazy, but like give back,
Mhm.
to the community by helping people, by welcoming them. I'm trying to give back because I got to experience many positive things as well. And in some ways, I feel like I should give back. But these are, it the only way to give back, I feel, is not only to win tournaments,
Mhm.
because that part can be barred by many different things. And, it could be the case, you're not going to be happy to hear that, but it could be the case that maybe you keep playing and you never win another tournament. Same for me. Who knows? You know? Um, but does that make you a worse person? Or does that even make you worse at the game than you were before? It doesn't. You're still the same player. It's just that maybe KO decided to move to New York and win all the tournaments. No, but
Yeah.
who knows? Remember Issei moved to the US at some point.
Yeah.
You know, that something like that could happen. Does that make, it shouldn't have as big of an impact on the way you see yourself.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that's not fair. It's outside of your control. So it's hard, it's hard to tell yourself this because I understand what you're saying. I think you're saying if I don't put as much pressure on myself, then I'm never going to do it because I'm never going to work as hard as I need to win these tournaments. And I get that as well, but I have faith in you that you wouldn't be like that, and that it might be the opposite. That maybe a little bit less pressure, a little bit more easygoingness. I don't know if that's a word, but like going about things maybe in a bit more relaxed way, which is what you said, in your tweet the other day. But I think that can only help because this is a game that's decided by emotions. I feel like in tournaments, in the moment under pressure, is the person who has their mind the freshest or the coldest, that they are able to apply a lot of thinking rationally in the moment. I think that person is usually going to win. And a lot of that comes from like being able to empty your mind and not have too many expectations and being able to like cut off the context, like the crowd and everything else, and just focus on the conversation you're having in game. It's really hard, but I feel like that's how you do well. Everything else, I don't think it's really about wanting it too much and wanting to get more than other people. In my experience, that's sort of been the opposite. That people who don't care as much tend to do better in tournaments somehow. It's unfair, but that's how it is.
Well, I can't think of a better ending for the podcast than that. I will ask actually one question. Just give a well, it can be as long an answer as you want, but what does playing fighting games and playing Third Strike mean to you today? Spiritually in your life, just something positive to end on here of how playing fighting games has touched or is touching your life.
It's in many ways I see it as a happy place for me. It's a place of comfort because I've played a lot over the years. I've had so many emotions within the game, outside of the game, with the community, the tournaments, and so on. I do feel like it's a part of myself, but also it is something that I cherish a lot because I would like other people to get a good experience, to get maybe as good as an experience as I've had. It was not perfect, but it was something special. And I'd like to keep that going so that other people can have that special experience and feel like, they belong in this community and that people get them and that they get to have fun. They get to behave the way they want in in the community. So I would say that's what it means to me at this point. It's not something that belongs to me. It's something that belongs to everyone, and I'm just a part of it. I guess I'm happy to be a part of it. Maybe not a small part, maybe just a part. It doesn't really matter what part it is, but it's important to be part of something. And I feel like that's something I can be a part of, and I don't get that. So it is part of my identity as much as I want to say otherwise. It is part of it. But I feel like I've come to a point where my results do not define my identity. What people think when they see me play is not what is going to define my self-worth. Like I'm not going to be sad or feel less because people say that was ass or I played in a tournament, I played horrible. And no, I'm not at that point in life. I'm more at the point in life where I see this special thing that is happening. I want to keep it going, and I want other people to feel happy. And that's pretty much what it is. I want to have people to play against in 5 years, 10 years. If I can still play, then maybe more. That's all that really matters to me, that it keeps going and people understand it. So, I want to protect this special place.
Well, you, Billy Kane, have had a tremendous positive impact on me. And I said something at the beginning about how, the first time we ever conversed, I was reaching out to you to ask if you would do this podcast, not just this podcast series, but this very episode that we're now recording, a year and a half maybe later. There's some good reasons for that. And you caused the last delay, remember? You were sick.
I did.
Yeah.
I am sorry.
I delayed it for, a year and 5 months and a week, and then you delayed it that final week. So
yeah, I hope the people won't be too hard on me for this.
We're only as good as our last tournament, so
exactly.
You failed. But
that's okay, right? Remember what I say. I'm over
okay.
Tournament results.
It's okay. It doesn't affect who you are at your core. But we ended up meeting in Japan. You were the first person that I met in Japan. For those who don't know the story, which is probably most people, I was really excited to meet Billy Kane. I knew he was going to be there. Our trips coincided almost perfectly, for Co-op Cup. And the very first night, I flew overnight. I arrived early in the morning. I slept a few hours at the hotel. And then I went over to Game Newton, and the very first person that I met in Japan was Billy Kane, who was standing right outside the door of Game Newton. I couldn't imagine a more, perfect meeting. And you just had I mean, that 2 week trip to Japan was like, that's on my life highlight list of magical times. And even if I go back to Japan 10 more times, like that trip is always going to be just one of the greatest things I've ever done. And you and I just broed out there so hard. We, had our late night Coco Ichibanya curry conversations. We're talking gameplay. We're going to the different events. I dragged you out to Tachikawa Will on the last night. And man, you added so much to that trip for me. And you really have changed my life and you've been nudging me, more and more, and been such a living, breathing example of like a lot of the values that I am trying to embody and maintain. And so it's only fitting that the podcast ended with you kind of giving me a little sermon there on my attitude and stuff. And I thank you so much, and I know that I'm just one of many people that you have touched over the years. And I'm just, we talked about everything happening for a reason, and I think we met for a reason. And I'm just so, so grateful for that. And I have a lot of love for you, man. And I hope we get to, continue the journey together, because it's a journey. I really hope that some listeners will get something out of our conversation. But I can tell you, I know that I got a whole lot out of it. And I hope you did too, man. This has been wonderful.
Thank you. It's a lot of praise, and always, I never know how to react to such praise. I think it's probably a little too much, but I've also really enjoyed interacting with you. I still do, and I think you're a good friend, and I enjoy these conversations. So if I can be a positive influence to anyone's life, and I mean, usually Third Strike players is my main area of influence, then I'm happy for that. I'm trying to contribute as much as I can in any way that I can. So I'm very thankful that you were happy to talk with me.
You're so welcome. And if I were a trash talker, I would break the tension by saying you are still ass, though.
Yeah,
But
I still,
the thing
I
is,
would agree.
we're all ass. We're all great, and we're all ass. It's all
Yeah.
just
Does
everything.
it does it really matter is the question.
As you would say, who cares?
Exactly.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. And sure, you can see you on Fightcade, and even better at the next offline event. And let's just keep passing all the good vibes forward, and roll tide.
Thank you.